Hello, everyone. It is Sunday, the 29th of September, 2024. And I've been doing a lot of research in the last few days, quite a few rabbit holes. And I've noticed that even in the last couple of weeks, just even recently, people seem to be a little bit more upset with my social media posts on things like Instagram and Facebook, and to the point where they're reaching out and just like attacking me for some of my posts or saying like, "What's the purpose of this?" And I'm like, "Well, you go on my page. I don't go on yours, respectfully. And you were warned, or you were given that warning, or whatever you want to call it, before even following my accounts." And I'm not going to stop sharing controversial information, right? Like I'm sharing things that I've researched. I don't get it right all the time, but but I get it right most of the time, right? Like I've been getting it right more than most people that are within even within the truther community, because I do speak out on not just stuff like the ship, the Earth, and the moon landings and 9/11 and January 6th, 2021, and the Freedom Convoy, international events, USS Liberty, Northwoods, all of that stuff. But I also talk about current events, and my background is I'm going to say it, it's unique because of my military background. That was unique in and itself, especially as a female, where I was operating and what I was doing. And then even post military, like I've been working with all levels of government in very unique positions, and that has afforded me a lot more experience to speak on what's going on again with these current events. And it's upsetting people when I'm sharing light on like even what's going on in Israel and Palestine, and sharing what actually happened closer than most people that are sharing this. And especially I'm getting this closer than people within the Canadian government, is the IDF involvement in shootings on Israelis that were attending the concert, and then hostage accounts about what they experienced again, and being shot at by Israelis, unfortunately, right? Like, and it's not because I'm an anti-Semite or any of that stuff. I'm not. And there are people within Israel that have been protesting and that are speaking out on this, and this is impacting the Jewish community internationally, and people are speaking out on what's going on, like because there are people outside of like censored Western societies that are getting the reality of what's going on. It's not what you're being told, so I'm not blaming you, but you really need to get off of the mainstream media, the left and the right, Fox and CNN, and start doing your own independent research, because we are at ridiculous times right now for the information that's being relayed, and again, even by people like public officials that are hired and like, well, they're paid to share the truth and what's going on, and they're not, and it's causing a lot of harm. Elon Musk was even talking about buying CNN and Fox and just canceling them. I don't disagree with that at this point, and but anyway, I wanted to share some information and then shut it down off of my browser because I got so many tabs up. But I wanted to share this the other day. This is Wagging the Moon Doggy. This was talked about in one of the videos I was sharing from Taboo Conspiracy, I believe it was. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then just like the different series with different data regarding the moon landings and things that people should be looking more into. Anyway, there's audible versions as well, but you can also read it. And then there's at the top here. Anyway, I don't even get paid to share this information. It's just it's hard to find, and yeah, and it's very interesting information. So I'll shut that down now, take it off my browser. I also wanted to talk about how, like, the distance that the ISS is from Earth surface level, because I was talking about the ISS, and I was talking about how Americans go to Roscosmos in Russia, and it's like $81 million average flight path from Russia to or Earth to the ISS, and it's approximately 250 miles, is what they're alleging that it travels at approximately 17,500 miles per hour, so orbiting Earth every 90 minutes. Yeah, and so the Kármán line is anywhere between, they say, like 60 and 100 kilometers, 40 to 60 at like approximately miles, and that's the delineation between inner and outer Earth. orbit or space or whatever you want to call it. So anyway, I think it's closer, much closer. And I do think that a lot of footage as well that is being relayed as coming from the ISS, I do believe a lot of it is also on the ground and being done in green rooms and in underwater pools. So I just wanted to get another way. Completely different tangent that I'll be talking about today, and so I'm sorry for that. And oh, I'm on the wrong. Wait 1 minute. Just shut this down for a second because it's showing me I have so many browsers up, but I also have like multiple different internet platforms up. Okay, here we go. This is from a couple of years ago, but it still applies. Edmonton pediatrician found guilty on child pornography charges. An Edmonton pediatrician has been found guilty of possessing and distributing child pornography. Court of King's Bench Justice Kent Davidson delivered his decision Monday in the case of Dr. Ghassan Al-Nami, whose trial was held earlier this year. Davidson found Al-Nami guilty of transmission of child pornography, which carries a minimum of 1 year up to 14 years imprisonment, and possession of child pornography, which carries the same minimum and up to 10 years imprisonment. Sentencing dates have not been set. He found the video, met the definition. Okay, because he was released, I believe, but I'm gonna just check this, and he's still able to practice. I just believe he's not able to practice his medicine. I don't know with children under the age of 16 years old. Charges okay, allowed to resume seeing patients. Okay, so that is also on this one. Yeah. After investigations by Alberta law enforcement, 2019. He was allowed to return to practice with an approved chaperone in attendance for patient encounters. So he's not even in jail. A criminal conviction is considered unprofessional conduct under the Health Professions Act and subject to disciplinary action through the organization's complaint process. Yeah. Anyway, so this is happening all over Canada, unfortunately. And then so it's not even just with that. With the but there's also the with the vaccines, and I'm going to say it, and I'm on YouTube and I don't care, and it'll just be another strike. It is what it is. But where pediatricians and these offices were given money, large sums of money from organizations such as Pfizer, and I've shared the financial data to prove that even a few years ago. And I was sharing that with people. I'm like, look, people are getting incentivized in order to push this vaccine to inoculate children. And I'm like, this is anyway. And it's not even people that care. Anyway, it's all about the money for some people. So talking about crime in Canada. This is the Violent Crime Severity Index in Canada from 2002 to 2023. I'm Canadian, so I wanted to talk about this. And so from 2002, it was high during this period. It peaked 2006, but then it started going drastically down, especially under Harper. Very interesting. Look how friggin' low it got in 2014. Then what happened in 2015? We got Justin Trudeau. It goes down, 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 down. And then look at this. In 2020, the only reason I could assess that it went down a bit is because people were locked in during this period. And so like there was less crime, less violent crime, whatever you want to call it, because, people were, again, locked in, shut in. And and then significantly higher. And another reason why Justin Trudeau needs to be fired and criminally investigated. And like for so many different things, racketeering included. How much money did he get for under his leadership? Because this is very significant, and I don't understand why people are not looking at this more, and then seeing like the there's so much more that's going on here too with prescription overdoses and not prescriptions, like medications or drugs that should be prescribed to people, but being sold on the black market even by pharmacists, also being arrested for that stuff. Anyway, but we're focusing on online crimes, which are seen as hate crimes, which are not. And anyway, instead of focusing on actual crimes within Canada, it's frustrating. And there was a specific, I shared this on one of Pierre Poilievre's posts because he was talking about anti-Semitism being on the rise in Canada. And in 2022, there's this new unit that's out in Canada with multiple chiefs of police, and it's specifically to target anti-Semitism. And so when you have full out organizations that are put together, okay, and it's very specifically biased to just look at one group and one demographic, I believe that the numbers could possibly be skewed, especially if you're counting in the online what they're like, again, like things that are like that are not actually hate crimes. It's just people are getting offended, and it's yeah. Anyways, we need to focus on bigger things. And it's this is Clifford Small, I believe. Yeah, Clifford Small, member of Parliament from Notre Dame Bay, and this is him speaking.
At a town hall in Stoneville in Notre Dame Bay, at part of my riding, terrified seniors told of being threatened that they be burned out of their homes, that they be burned in their beds, Madam Speaker, at the town hall where the RCMP were present. 75-year-old retirees who worked hard all their life for a safe Canada are sleeping with a baseball bat next to their bed in Gander. A few weeks ago in Lewisport, an RCMP squad car was vandalized and it was spray painted with back off by these criminals in rural Canada. So, Madam Speaker, the towns of less than 1,000 people in my riding, with 5 crack houses operating, where young girls, teenagers, are being sold into prostitution, Madam Speaker. These are children. These are children of the people that we represent. So it's time to stop the crime. How can this member support this NDP Liberal coalition that's let this rot, this crime, creep into rural Canada in places like my riding in Notre Dame Bay?
The leader of the Conservative Party addresses his national caucus just before coming in, and this is in part what he says, quote, "There would be mass hunger and malnutrition. With tax this high, our seniors would have to turn the heat down to 14 to 13 to C just to make it through the winter. Inflation would run rampant, and people would not be able to leave their homes or drive anywhere." This is the type of extreme right, mega right attitudes.
Right, mega, make America great again. Right, make Canada great again. And actually, this guy that thinks that he's quoting like inconsistencies or incorrect information has no idea what he's talking about. No idea what he's talking about. So I hope he gets fired for this, because this is actually happening. This even happened even last winter. And even myself included in that, right? With a carbon tax increase. Again, this is a scam. It's not going where you think it's going. It's lining pockets of people that are already fucking wealthy, ladies and gentlemen. And these are all communist practices, ladies and gentlemen. And I think what they're trying to price fix, or whatever you want to call it, our food. They're trying to get control of our agriculture. This is targeting rural areas, farm areas. And again, having to even shut off the furnace, having to shut off the heat, because prices are through the fucking roof. We cannot afford this. We cannot afford the increase that keeps on coming. And again, this is money that's getting stolen from people. Farms are shutting down every fucking day. Okay. And businesses that are affiliated with farms, and I'm talking about all sizes, even the small ones where it's subsistence, where people are growing food for themselves and maybe a bit for their families and friends, but not selling their produce and stuff like that at the farmers markets or at local grocery stores and stuff like that. This is all like, even in the Gaspésie, where I'm from, I go there often, and there's only one organic farm left there. Ladies and gentlemen, the fishing plants are shutting down still. It's people that live in the gated communities and take their business class flights to like other gated community areas, and they're like being lied to by other government people that are just, anyways, it's just all bullshit. They don't know what's going on in the rest of Canada, and they're not being impacted like we are. Like I've said, like I'm directly impacted as well. I've had to shut my furnace off last year multiple times, or only run it a few hours a day. And it was cold. And I was taking like electrical heaters in my office, doing my videos and stuff like that, or my research and my work. Again, this is not a pity party or anything like that, because I'm still young enough to be able to manage. But older people, they are impacted more by temperature changes, right? Whether it be too hot or too cold, they're not able to regulate their temperatures as efficiently as people who are younger for a variety of reasons. For a variety of reasons, I won't get into, but including blood circulation and bone density loss and lean muscle mass loss and stuff like that. But anyway, it's and there's more people even within Ottawa, because like I was training the like security professionals at multiple different levels, but also the ones that worked at all the LCBOs within the province of Ontario, and within that network, right, they talk, right, they're either by grocery stores or they work, they interchange, they do work in other areas as well. And I was told by the higher ups, the supervisors, that like talking within the communities within Ottawa, it's breaking their friggin' hearts, but they're seeing more and more elderly people in the last year or two that are stealing food because they can't fucking afford to eat. And yeah, and so this is happening. This is not bullshit, and this is under Justin Trudeau, and he's making like his wealth has gone up significantly. And Doug Ford, like these people that are managing us into the ground, they are all, again, they're profiting from their policies and mandates and everything they're spewing at us, cheating on their wives and having just a great time. And again, so of course they're not going to like change anything, because why would they? There's no incentive for them. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm on a tangent, but and they are fearing for their lives, and again, not all, but especially since COVID, because they saw what happened to a lot of their peers, and especially April of 2021. I'm going to reiterate, people need to look at that fucking month in Canada, look at the deaths, look at the inoculations, especially in long-term care facilities and nursing homes in city centers and surrounding, and morgues. Talk to people that work at morgues. I've shared the information that from whistleblowers, people within this area that were screaming about this, people that like worked in morgues and stuff like that, saying that this is not normal. This is like the highest volume of anyway. I'm on YouTube. I'll just see if he's going to carry on with his bullshit.
And the propaganda that they spill every day, just like what we heard opposite, Madam Speaker. There was the bail reform bill that was supported by all parties.
Tiens, 11 commentaires.
Okay, yeah, so it was over. Anyway, so Canada's a bit of a shit show, and when you have more crime in city centers, and then it goes into the suburbs, it also starts to infect the rural areas eventually, and it's happening, and we're seeing it all over rural Canada and in Indigenous communities as well. Like within their areas, they're getting impacted by, I would say, the people that are opportunists to look at and exploit our resources. So many tangents, but I want to get into Canadian crime rings. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Soderno Group, but the Soderno Group is this is the Wikipedia page. So again, take it with a grain of salt, but there's actually a lot of good information in here. So I'm impressed enough that I want to read off this, and because I think they get a lot of it right. Anyway, the Soderno Group is a criminal association in Canada, Australia, and Italy related to the Drangheta. I'm mispronouncing that, and I'm sorry. A mafia-type organization in Calabria. The association is labeled the Soderno Group because its members primarily came from the town of Soderno on the Ionian coast of Calabria and migrated to Canada and Australia in the 1950s. The Soderno Group operates throughout Canada, the United States, Australia, and Europe, and is composed of a group of families who are related by blood or marriage. Soderno is home to one of Drangheta's biggest and most important clans, the Commisso Drina, involved in the global cocaine business and money laundering. According to the Soderno police force, the criminal minds of Soderno are in Canada. The group has moved narcotics over 3 continents. They had contacts in Bolivia, Venezuela, Brazil, Chile, and Peru, and had permanent representation in Colombia for drugs and in Costa Rica and Panama for money laundering. Its key man in Colombia, Roberto Panunzi, was arrested in Medellin, Colombia in 1994. In the past, he had been in charge of heroin shipments from Turkey through Italy to the United States. In Canada, in particular the Greater Toronto Area, a branch of the Sojourner Group has been active since the 1950s. Until 1980, the head of the group was Michel Mike Racco. He maintained close contacts with the Lupino crime family in Hamilton, Ontario, and with the Controni crime family in Montreal. By 1962, Racco established a Crimini and Camera di Controllo in Canada with the help of Giacomo Lupino and Rocco Zito. Salvatore Triamberi and Filippo Vendemini were also co-founders until Rocco sanctioned their murders in 1967 and 1969, respectively, due to disputes. Rocco had been urged to start the Canadian operation by Antonio Macri, the undisputed boss of Sojourner, until he was killed in January 1975. Michel Rocco died of cancer in January 1980. The group's initial involvement in Canada, Sojourner's Old World, Drangheta boss sent acolytes to populate the New World, including Michel or Mike Rocco, who settled in Toronto in 1952, followed by other mob families. According to investigators in Italy, by 2010, Toronto's Drangheta had climbed to the top of the criminal world with an unbreakable umbilical cord to Calabria. The report stated that there were 7 senior Drangheta bosses in the Greater Toronto Area, some of the Camera di Controllo, the board of directors. Yeah, it's included Coluccio. I'm probably pronouncing this wrong. I'm sorry. Tavernes, De Maria, Figliomini, Russo, and Camiso crime families. Leaders are based both in Calabria and Ontario. And I'm going to say they're also on the West Coast and they're also in Montreal. So anyway, we're also linked to the Drangheta group. By 1976, Cosimo Camiso was considered by the police to be Capo Baston, underboss in the Sojourner group. By the early 1980s, Zito was boss of the Toronto Sojourner group after the death of Michel Rocco. Rocco's son, Dominic Rocco, also filled his void briefly. In January 1983, Anthony Musitano of the Hamilton-based Musitano crime family was sentenced to 15 years in prison for bombing a number of businesses in Hamilton, including bakeries. While in prison, he orchestrated the murder of Dominic Rocco, who violated their cocaine trade agreement by dealing behind Musitano's back and also owed the Musitano family as much as $500,000. Rocco was also arrested in February 1982 and charged in connection with a cocaine trafficking conspiracy and was awaiting trial. So there's just a lot here, but the Sojourner mob families. Yeah. Drug trafficking, cigarette smuggling, extortion, and gambling. And also human trafficking and prostitution. So yeah, I mean, this is like there's a lot in here. By mid-2019, police in Italy and in Canada were convinced that the Drangheta's Canadian presence had become so powerful and influential that the board north of Toronto has the authority to make decisions not only in relation to Canada's underworld, but also abroad, even back in Sojourner. The York Regional Police announced the largest organized crime bust in Ontario, part of an 18-month-long operation called Project Sindicato that was also coordinated with the Italian State Police. Actually, that's a pretty good name. Anyway, 15 people arrested in Canada and seized $35 million worth of homes, sports cars, and cash in a major transatlantic probe targeting the most prominent wing of the Drangheta in Canada. Like they do that, right? It's like sports cars, homes, yachts, you know, and that's how they hide their wealth, and they don't have to claim it. It's like not seen as a part of their salary or whatever you want to call it. So this is Calabria. Very nice. This area in red. Peninsula bordered by Basilicata to the north in the Ionian Sea. To the east, I've been to Italy. Very nice. I've been to multiple places in Europe. Over 10 places in Europe. Calabria is the birthplace of the name of Italy, given to it by the ancient Greeks who settled in the land starting from the 8th century BC. Again, oh. Calabria became the home of key figures in history such as Pythagoras, Herodotus, and Milo. I think it's also called the Ark or something like that. I don't know. Anyway. Art of silk in Calabria and made it the main silk production area in Europe. Calabria is known for its crystal clear sea waters, and it's dotted with ancient villages, castles, and archaeological parks. Yeah, there's also a tree that it's known for. That's in Bosnia, I believe, and Calabria. Talks about the mountains, which could be again ruins that have been covered over and like buried, and then just like this stuff growing over it. So excavations of certain areas would be very interesting. Yeah, the Calabrian Arc, an arc-shaped geographic domain extending from the southern part of the Basilicata region to the northeast of Sicily and including the Peloritano Mountains. Yeah, it's just... Calabria is one of the oldest records of human presence in Italy. Anyway, just wanted to show you that. So Andrangheta is another pronunciation of it. Anyway, is an Italian mafia type association based in the peninsular region of Calabria and dating back to the 19th century. Although loosely structured, it is considered one of the most powerful organized crime groups in the world. It is characterized by a horizontal structure made up of autonomous clans known as Nadrine, based almost exclusively on blood ties. Since the 1950s, following wide-scale emigration from Calabria, Drangheta clans dispersed to other European countries, Australia, and the Americas. Currently, its main activity is drug trafficking, but it also deals with arms trafficking, money laundering, racketeering, extortion, and loan sharking. Yeah. Just more on that. It's very interesting. So yeah, again, people think that Canada is just like some, like, I don't know, polite, friggin' country that doesn't have any impact or influence on the world scale, on the world stage. But I don't know. Reading things like this would suggest otherwise. Even with the MK Ultra stuff that was happening during this period as well, there was Canadian involvement in that as well. There were like that same type of stuff was happening in Canada, including in Montreal and in Ontario. So this is the Camiso Drina, powerful clan of the Drangheta family, a criminal and mafia type organization. Again, this is just more in it, but also has branched in the Greater Toronto area in Canada as part of the Sojourner Group. The Camiso clan is involved in international drug trafficking, using family ties in Italy, Canada, the United States, and Australia. The Catrone crime family, originally Catrone, was an Italian-Canadian Drangheta type organized crime syndicate based in Montreal, Quebec. The United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, considered the family a branch of the Bonanno crime family of New York. So even New York connections, and we all know about that, right? There's movies about the crime rings in New York. Anyway, the organization was established in the 1940s by Vincenzo Catrone, a Calabrian immigrant from Mamola. It's a commune municipality in the metropolitan city of Reggio Calabria in the Italian region of Calabria. 37 miles northeast of Reggio. Its territory once covered most of southern Quebec and Ontario. An internal war broke out between the Calabrian and Sicilian factions of the family in the late 1970s, which resulted in the death of acting captain Paolo Violi and his brothers. This allowed the Sicilian Rizzuto faction, a Sicilian mafia crime family, to overtake the Catroni's Calabrian faction as the preeminent crime family in Montreal. Yeah. So I've said this before, but also like involved in grooming children, like the Italian mafia mob, whatever you want to call them. Like they still have a presence in Montreal, like that I know for a fact, right? Because as a teenager, that's when we moved to Laval from the Gaspésie, and I was in Montreal all the time, and I do have friends again that were affiliated with gangs and my stepfather's side affiliated. And again, I only say this to get it out there on public record because I'm not hiding anything. I'm not a criminal. And again, I was a child that was like that was like exposed to this, like not by my own accord or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, and so I wasn't doing anything, like I wasn't doing any illegal activity, but again, I was also a child. But I saw a lot of it. I was exposed to it. And I'll just reiterate that. And so I had people that were friends, like even close friends that were involved again in the in selling drugs, and then enabling like the escort industry or involved with people that were involved in that, and so this was like there were children, because teenagers that were groomed, right? Like so they would be targeted and given drugs, alcohol, like they would be given a lot of money and then like a lot of attention. And especially if they come from troubled homes, you know what I mean? Like there are children that are looking for that, right? And so like at a very young age, when you are, and again, if you look at Piaget's, developmental stages, you'll see that like our brains are not even fully developed until the age of 25, right? And so when you look at rational decision making processes, or using your executive processing skills effectively and looking at long-term implications or ramifications of your actions, you're not doing that when you're a teenager, right? And so unfortunately they're getting exploited, very easily influenced, and hormones going through the roof and stuff like that as well. And so they are again, like I would say, groomed. I don't know another way of saying it, into doing things that they shouldn't be doing, right? So like along with the drugs and stuff like that comes like sexual exploitation, and minors at coffee shops getting sold to men and being driven to hotel, like high-end hotels and gentlemen's clubs and stuff like that. Again, these are rich, wealthy men largely that are using these services and traveling from other countries to come here for these services. And yeah, and there's a lot of them that go missing or die, even with overdoses and stuff like that. Or anyway, and yeah, so they're still operating in these areas. They're still rotting Canada from the fucking inside out, and it is what it is. Yeah, so there's a dark side, underbelly to what people think is legit. Before I get, no, actually, no, I'm already half an hour in. I was going to talk about chemtrails. I haven't seen the whole video, but I have some good news. Expanding Reality, who's big on social media platforms like Instagram, share really good information. And so I haven't seen this full video yet. I've seen a little bit of it, but I'm actually going to be going on his show for the Sunday hangout, or whatever you want to call it. And it is from 4 to 6 Central Time. So 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, my time. So from 5 to 7 tonight, or today. I get up early, so that's considered night to me. Anyway, dinner time. I will be on a show. He sent me a voice message on Instagram, and so I got to listen to that, because I don't know if we're going to be talking about chemtrails. I don't know if we're going to be talking about other things, but he had on Sharon Dapta and Gib Lazar on a little while ago, I guess a month ago, and apparently it went really well. And so he's going to have them back on. So I think that I might be talking with them also on the podcast as well, and likely other people as well. But anyway, chemtrails and contrails seem to be like a topic of conversation more and more. again, which is great. Every few months, I like to talk about chemtrails and contrails, and show like the patent dispersals, the patents that have been out on dispersal, dispersal mechanisms that have been created even decades ago, and actually even some like almost 100 years ago, that sprays certain particles that some are toxic, some are not toxic, and some at higher levels are toxic, and this has been openly admitted that things like silver iodide and aluminum oxide and other heavy metals are being dispersed. Again, it's at the higher levels, right? There's a difference between contrails and chemtrails, but I'm sure that they're going to get into this here. It's an hour, a little over an hour long. I'm going to play the whole thing and see what their take is on it, because there is a lot of misinformation regarding chemtrails and contrails as well, and people calling contrails chemtrails, and again, they're not. There is a difference, and again, even with the dispersal systems and the aircrafts that are used, a lot of them are at way higher elevations, and yeah.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level.
The show description. Now join us for the skies above us. Is it chemtrails? Is there to expanding reality? I am your host, Brandon Thomas. On this incredibly cool episode, Sharon Daphna and Gabe Lazar join me to talk about what is going on in the potentially satanic skies above us. Is it chemtrails? Are they spraying something, or is it something completely different? Now they have a fantastic idea and a wonderful, wonderful organization, chembo.com, and all the other ways to find them linked down in the show description. Now join us for the afterthought for this particular conversation, where we go into the confounding of cause and effect. And it's, of course, fascinating, guys. You're absolutely going to love it. Beautiful way to support your favorite show. But without any further ado, let's get to this incredibly cool conversation with Sharon Daphna and Gabe Lazar.
Yeah, so before I even get into that, like I should have shared this first. I'm excited about that because here, I'm just going to show you. I just wanted to do a search on my videos on Rumble. So you can take a look at, this is from 28 weeks ago. Do bloodlines matter? Are chemtrails real? ? 40 weeks ago, chemtrails ? Chem makeup, fake fossil fuels, all ? But again, this was 40 weeks ago. And I only and I have more videos on chemtrails. It's just not in the title, right? Unfortunately, sometimes I talk about a bunch of different things, and you wouldn't be able to tell by the title of my video, because I do go on a lot of tangents. Okay, here we go.
Welcoming to the show, we have Sharon Daphna and Gabe Lazar. It's good to see you guys. How's everything?
Good. It's nice to see you too. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
I am so excited. You guys did join us for a hangout, which can be found down in the show description, as well as the afterthought for this conversation. So great way to support your favorite show, guys. Go check that out. Now, on there, I was so grateful to display because we have a mutual friend in Dawn Lester. She actually came into Texas and ended up, here, I'm going to hold it still for the camera. Audio only audience, check the video version. But anyway, we're going to share all the graphics and things like that. She came in town and we just had a fascinating conversation, picking her up from Bandera, Texas. It's 4.5 hours away, so we had plenty of time to talk. And she came to the conclusion that she was gifted this piece of orgonite back here and said that I should have it. And she ended up giving me this and your card. And it changed things around here. We're really going to talk about this today, guys, because I'm very excited to get you on here, okay? Want to remind the listening audience all the ways to find them down in the show description. Now, Gabe, Sharon, just in your own words here, tell us a little bit about yourselves. Tell us how you got started in this, and we're just going to go for it here, guys.
Well, actually, Gabe got me started in the first place because years ago, we were very concerned about what we were seeing in the sky. We saw a lot of jet trails in the sky, a lot of pollution, what we perceived as heavy pollution. And I didn't know anything about this back in 2011 when Gabe first brought it up with me, and we were first together as a couple. And once he mentioned that this stuff wasn't normal, I'd only heard about it once before from my coffee guy at the farmer's market. He had said, oh, they're spraying us with chemtrails and it's a government plot. And I thought, well, I don't know about any of that. It looks just like what airplanes do. And then he said it to me. He says, oh, they're doing something up there to make us stupid, he said. And so I thought, well, I should look into this a little bit more. So I started looking into it a little bit more in 2011. And I didn't find any real information, to be honest. I looked all over the internet. I found a lot of what I learned later was disinfo. From Geoengineering Watch and these kinds of groups that tell you that we're being sprayed and there's nothing you could do about it and we're all going to die.
Yeah, write your government representative and complain to them, that kind of stuff.
So I didn't really know what any of that was other than it was something not normal. It was something not good. And so after Gabe brought it up with me, I started looking into it, but it took literally 2 whole years before we came to a solution to it, which was orgone energy. We learned that what was happening up there wasn't actually spraying of chemicals. It was actually an energetic warfare going on this earth. It was actually weather warfare and the war for our consciousness, all done through energy. So I know it might come as a great surprise to people who have seen all that stuff and looked at all the geoengineering type of narratives out there, but the alt media's explanation for it just isn't what it is. And after 10 years of research and field work with orgone energy and using the orgonite devices, we learned that everything up there can be completely cured energetically. So it's a very, very long story. We've come a long way in 10 years because we went from that total fear, and despair, like we're being sprayed with chemicals, there's nothing we can do. When we learned that even if it is chemicals, the orgonite gets rid of it. But it's probably not chemicals like they're telling us.
It's all energetic.
It's all energetic phenomenon going up there that's causing us to see it the way we're seeing it.
And when you learn about the solution and how easy it is and that anyone can utilize it, all that fear and hysteria just goes out the window.
Yeah. So in 2014, we made our first orgonites, and I was very skeptical because I had seen stuff about it online, and it looked like, just these little sculptures. Yeah. And I got mine too.
Nice.
And, I thought, well, how can this do anything, But I learned the science of it from the electrical engineer, Ken Rolla, and he explained how it actually can throw pollution out of the atmosphere, how it changes the energetic charge of the atmosphere. And as well, DeWin Gardner, who wrote a book called The Science of Rain, which he since edited and destroyed, actually. That's another story. But back in 2014, he wrote a book that explained the energy of the atmosphere. He barely even used the word chemtrail at all. I don't even know if it appeared maybe once in the book, if at all, because it's so unimportant when you learn the energy. So I learned from 2 people who are working in the science of it, of orgonomy, and that was the game changer for me. I thought it's worth a try. And we tried it. And sure enough, we made our first batch of these little small pyramids, these flat top pyramids. And we made a small batch of those. They were curing outside of our house. And as they were curing, all the haze in the sky just went away in a blue circle over our house for about a mile around. So we were starting to see it. And we thought, okay, there's something to this energetic stuff. And we went from there.
Yeah, then we just went with it. And again, we realized that what we're saying flies in the face of all of that alt media narrative about spraying and stuff. But the work that we've done for the last 10 years does prove that it works.
Yeah.
It's actually so on brand, guys. It's so on brand because we talk about, these levels of psyops and the ability for your consciousness to be hijacked, your energy, your attention, all of this. And whenever we look at something like, let's say the thing that happened a few years back, a lot of people will go to the bat thing and stop there, and then that's it. It's beyond the normal narrative, but it goes to the bat and then it stops. They won't investigate it any further. So when you look at things like this, and there's answers in the form of data and charts of barium, strontium, and aluminum, being in higher quality amounts in the snowfall and all this stuff, and these meteorologists looking at it, it's interesting to think that maybe that is what's occurring, but not in the way that we think it is. So it's fascinating, again, to take this sort of new approach to an old idea and sort of next level this thing, not get stuck on the first part of the psyop bit in the fear part of it. And it's interesting you guys say this because for, I don't know, a while now, I've been bouncing love off of them. I've been saying, well, good, it's good that you spray that up there because I'm just bouncing love off of it. So we've been sort of mentally alchemizing this for a while, but it's nice to now be able to physically, energetically interact with this in a very different way. It changes your relationship to what seems impossible for you to control flying above your head and being dumped on you, and all of these things. So tell me how you guys reframe this narrative. It's fascinating.
Well, what you said is really interesting that you were using love, because orgone energy is life force energy and is the energy of love. It's the energy of life. So you were already intuitively using it against something that you knew was evil.
Nice.
As for these amounts of chemicals being found in the environment, we're being told they're falling on us by certain people, but in reality, they're coming from so many sources. We can't really determine. I mean, there's pesticides, there's industrial pollution. Everything in this world is so polluted. We can't really determine where they're coming from. And this narrative that they're falling on us is part of the disempowering narrative that says you can't do anything about it. When in fact, if you change the way you eat, drink, and live, and you can actually remove toxins from the body. So I know a lot of listeners who have been listening to that narrative for years, which has been out there a long time, long before we started using Organite. In fact, we were believers of that as well, until we disproved it. But, anybody who really believes that might think that I'm nuts with what I'm saying here. But there really is no proof that came from something in the sky. There's no proof. It's just there. So when you see that the orgone energy removes what's in the sky, that removes all the fear. So even if something was falling, you never have to worry about it again, because this removes it from the sky completely.
Okay, so so many questions, guys, right? Okay, what's the first one you think I'm going to ask? And you can go ahead and ask it and answer it.
I'm not exactly sure. People usually ask me,
what is Organite?
Well, I mean, that was what I would ask, but most people focus on chemtrails. So that's why I'm not sure where you would go.
Okay, well then that's fascinating. I definitely have down here to speak with you about Organite. We have plenty of time to do that. But since we're on the topic of snuffing out fear here, or re-alchemizing our ideas, we have seen images of tanks on planes. We have seen planes flying above, what we think are planes, rather, flying above with what seems to be things being sprayed out. They are altering the atmosphere, it seems, in a physical way from our perception to thin out, to block the sun, to all these things. So we're seeing physical things occur in the sky by something being sprayed out of what we think is a plane. What is that? What are they spraying? What is this?
I wanted to start this with the confounding of cause and effect. That's a huge tool that the parasitic world order uses against humans. It's the confounding of cause and effect. So what they'll usually do, and this happens, you can see it in every subject, but especially weather, they're going to tell you that one effect of something caused another effect, and they'll never tell you the cause. So what you're seeing up there is an effect of something, and they're attributing those trails as the cause of changing weather. My website explains the difference between cloud seeding and terraforming. And cloud seeding is something that people can do. They can take small aircraft and spray silver iodide into the atmosphere. If this is supposed to increase rainfall, it's actually an extremely ineffective method. Mainstream science acknowledges cloud seeding as ineffective in producing rain. It can only barely increase the amount of rain if it's already present. So that's the one thing people are mixing up here, is cloud seeding and terraforming. And then we're also told that what's going on up there, when you see what's up there, that's not cloud seeding, that's beyond cloud seeding. But we're told that the lines in the sky themselves are the cause for weather problems, when in fact, the weather problems are causing the lines to stick. The energetic problems on Earth are the cause of the weather problems that are causing the lines to stick and creating the weather problems. So the lines are not the cause of the climate imbalance on Earth. They're a result of the energetic imbalance that causes the climate imbalance. So what they're doing is they're not telling us the root cause. They're just showing us a bunch of effects. So no,
it's a classic red herring. I don't know if you've heard that expression, but just to divert people away from the cause, because once people are aware of the cause, that leads directly to the solution, and people are no longer disempowered at that point.
And we can tell you the cause, and this is what they don't want you to know. The cause is cell towers. The cause is those cell phone towers that you see all over the entire continent, all over the world. That is the weather control grid. And they want us to think the lines in the sky are the weather control. In fact, without those cell towers on the ground, those lines would not persist.
Anyone that talks about chemtrails or contrails in my network, we also talk about the frequencies that are being utilized by like places like HARP and CERN and other whatever you want to call it, organizations or agencies that are testing things like ionizing particles, essentially is what I want to say. But even what we're seeing as aurora borealis now, I do believe that there's more testing that's being done in these in like for HAARP, for example, which are causing like these like a lot of these large these light shows as well that we're seeing that are possibly man-made. There's aurora borealis and aurora corona. Anyways, and the other one, what is it? Aurora borealis and corona borealis. I think that's what it is. Anyways, whatever it is, which cause like the natural light shows. But you also have again like these institutions that are creating some of the light shows that we see in the sky, and then making these patterns. So when you see these cloud patterns that like look like they're being like impacted, like that they look really like a pattern. Essentially, this is also being caused by like I think also like some kind of like EMF or EMP activity that's happening above. Anyways, I'm just gonna like refresh myself on all this stuff like before I get into this. But yeah, they were speaking about Carl Jung and Wilhelm Reich. I want to assume it's pronounced like that, maybe not. And so I just wanted to share some things about Wilhelm Reich and Orgon Energy Accumulator. This is from Simple Psychology. So just talked a little bit about him. Wilhelm Reich, 1897 to 1957, was a psychoanalyst who apprenticed under Freud. He developed numerous theories around personality and the psychological and physiological origins of neurosis. Reich conducted experiments on animals and plants and humans that led him to conclude that there was an orgone energy that permeated phenomena ranging from weather and the formation of galaxies to physical health and human emotion. So, like, I do believe that this is a contained environment being projected on a flat plane of inertia and being projected via electricity and magnetism that is creating light in various temperatures, densities, and pressures. And so again, even with that and all, he proposed touch-based treatments that greatly diverged from those of contemporary psychoanalysts. Like he would have people, like he'd be touching their breasts, he'd be touching other areas of their body, having them where they would be naked. And again, he wasn't a clinical medical doctor, right? He was a psychologist or psychiatrist or something like that. Anyway, he had an outspoken anti-fascist and pro-communist political view. So he was a communist and Marxist, self-prescribed. As a result, received substantial criticisms from both psychoanalysts and other leftists and rightists, I would assume. Yeah, psychological. Anyway. A psychoanalyst who developed a number of radical psychoanalytical and physical theories. An apprentice of Freud, he believed that neurosis, as well as physical illness, such as cancer, derived from a lack of orgone energy in the body. Reich proposed that this energy could be restored through treatments such as generating sexual organisms and sitting in an orgone accumulation box. Yeah, so he received criticism for the role his Marxist political views took on in his research. Although his theories of personality remain popular and influential in psychoanalytical therapy, Reich's orgone therapy is largely ignored and considered pseudoscientific in modern psychology. I'm not saying that it's pseudoscientific. I'm just reading this. And so I'm going to look more into orgone therapy. And yeah, William Reich was born in 1897 in the eastern part of what is now Ukraine. Reich grew up on a farm and was tutored until the age of 13. Okay, so he had to flee. Okay, so he went to medical school, where he's indoctrinated by Sigmund Freud in the Vienna Psychoanalytical Association. Reich developed a close working relationship with Freud, becoming the first clinical assistant at Freud's psychoanalytic polyclinic in Vienna in the 1920s. So he was generally aligned with his written theoretical principles. So he worked Europe, the United States, before dying in a federal penitentiary in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Okay, so this is from Morris. Although this apprentice of another iconoclast, Sigmund Freud, Reich formulated ideas and theories that psychologists consider to be far more revolutionary, and that's from Morris, 1985. However, Reich, unlike his predecessor, was ultimately met with silence and dissension. For one thing, Reich was an open advocate of communism during the late 1920s, while both Sigmund and Anna Freud were not. Additionally, Reich shared outspoken views against Hitler and the rise of the Nazi Party, which provoked dissension in both his Freudian and communist circles. Reich also, this is like, I would be opposed of that too, right? Reich also opposed Freud's death instinct. The death instinct is a psychoanalytic theory that holds that people have a drive to reduce tension in their psyches to the lowest possible point, death. So that's more Freud. Now, unlike Freud, Reich believed that society should be built to conform to a man's needs rather than a man conforming to society's needs. That's very interesting. That's also very, again, like more communistic. Reich also notoriously gave lectures about women's civil rights and advocated for sexual freedom. Like Freud, Reich agreed that sexual development was the origin of mental disorders. Okay, I don't agree with that. Both psychoanalysts believe that most psychological states are dictated by unconscious processes. Infant sexuality develops early but is repressed, and this has important consequences for mental health. A Marxist, Reich expanded Freud's theories in a more radical direction. He argued that the source of sexual repression was bourgeois morality defined being guards the woman as property by demanding that she repress her own sexuality or that she disguise her own sexual needs and desires in order to fulfill the object expectation placed upon her. Anyway, because sexual repression in Reich's view was the cause of the neurosis, the best cure would involve an active, guilt-free sex life, and such a liberation could only come about through a morality that was not imposed by a repressive economic structure such as capitalism. People know my thoughts on that, right? Like monogamy. Anyway, all in all, it was Reich's outspoken. See, it's such an attack on the family structure, the family dynamic. Oh my God. And targeting children. Are you fucking kidding me? Oh my God. Oh my God. Reich also employed a bodily therapeutic method that contrasted greatly with contemporary psychoanalysts. Reich accompanied his talking cure, under quotation marks, with touch, feeling his patients' chests to check their breathing, repositioning their bodies, and sometimes requiring them to remove their clothes. Bion experiments. Based in Oslo, Norway in the mid-1930s, Reich conducted experiments seeking the origins of life. Reich examined protozoa, single-celled creatures within nuclei. He grew cultures using grass, beach sand, iron, animal tissue, potassium, and gelatin. After heating the materials to incandescent with a heat torch, he noted the presence of bright and glowing blue vesicles, which he claimed could also be cultured and gave off an observable radiant energy that he called orgon. He called these vesicles bions and believed that they were halfway between life and non-life. When he poured the cooled mixture onto the growth media, bacteria grew. Based on various control experiments, Reich rejected the idea that the bacteria came from contamination from the air or other materials used. Rather than garnering objections as to its biological validity, Reich's The Bion Experiments on the Origin of Life, 1938, largely led to attacks in the press based on his cultural background, accusing him of attempting to meddle with the origins of life. Bacilli experiments, or Bacilli, or Bacilli. Anyway, in his 1936 book, Beyond Psychology, Reich wrote that there were two types of single-celled organisms: life-destroying organisms that form through organic decay, and those that form from inorganic material that comes to life. This idea of spontaneous generation led Reich to believe that he had found the cause of cancer. He called life-destroying organisms Bacilli or Bacilli or Bacilli. I don't know how you fucking pronounce it. I used to, but I'm just forgetting now. Sorry. T coming from the German word Tod or death. Reich wrote that Bacilli, anyway, formed as a result of the disintegration of protein, and that when injected into mice, it resulted in inflammation and cancer in mice. From these experiments, Reich concluded that when organ energy diminishes in cells through aging or injuries, cells undergo death. At some point, Bacilli or perpetually form in cells, and the uncontrollable growth of these T cells result in death from cancer. Bacilli is a taxonomic class of bacteria that includes 2 orders, Bacillus and Lactobacillus, which contain several well-known pathogens. Yeah. Anyway, very interesting. Character analysis. Reich formulated the basis of a field called character pathology. Character or personality pathology refers to the enduring patterns of cognition, emotion, and behavior that negatively affects a person's adaptation, my goodness, to the social world. Anyway, let's see what here more. Okay, so orgone energy. Developed a theory that the ability for someone to feel sexual love depended on their physical ability to have sex, as determined by what he called orgastic potency. Reich attempted to measure the male orgasm, noting 4 distinct physiological phases. So yeah, so he was like studying male orgasms a lot. Interesting. Firstly, psychosexual buildup or tension. Secondly, the engorging of the male sex organs with an accompanying charge, which Reich measured electrically. I'm sure he did. Thirdly, an electrical discharge at the moment of orgasm. And lastly, the relaxation of the male sex organs. He believed that the force that he measured was a distinct form of energy present in all living things. In psychoanalysis, Reich drew conclusions from working with patients and extrapolated his own experience into theory. Perhaps the most notorious of his extrapolation was orgasm theory. Reich adapted Freud's theory of the sexual origins of neurosis and believed the sexual orgasms could be used as a treatment for such conditions. Like, it just goes on. The orgasm was a way of liberating the libido and sexual energy in humans. Reconnected the mind and body and eventually deviated from psychoanalysis, believing that talking cures were not as effective as treating the body directly. Revealed that there were charges at the skin's surface that fluctuated with both anxiety and pleasure. Yeah, I'm not really sold yet. I'm going to obviously listen to the podcast, see what they have to say. Reich believed that orgone is a primordial cosmic energy that was omnipresent and responsible for phenomena such as the weather, the color of the sky, gravity, galaxy. Okay, so no. All right. Okay, so we might just agree to disagree, it sounds like. I'm going to look more into it, obviously. But modern orgonomy is an outgrowth of the current therapeutic call to harness the power of character work and biophysical interventions in these treacherous modern times. Character work is distinctive in living form of therapy that softens. Okay, maybe this is not it. Yeah. Yes, no, it talks about students at Wilhelm Reich's orgonomic therapy. It's talking about, it's Jungian as well. Well, there's some elements of Jungian psychology in there as well. Transformation that is palpable after the first session. As the father of somatic psychology, Reich created a mind-body discipline that incorporates biophysical interventions through breath, direct manipulation, and physical expression. This biophysical work is paired with verbal analysis and is contained within a strong, spirited relationship between client and therapist. Anyway, on with the show.
And those lines are simply a byproduct of what's going on the ground. And what we're learning now is those lines in the sky don't even have to do with weather at all. They are, in fact, something else entirely, which is a huge, huge topic that we've been delving into recently. But yeah, the weather control is all done from the ground. It's all done with cell towers, with that positively ionizing radiation that prevents rainfall and causes pollution to linger. And that's the very energy that causes the lines to linger.
Mm-hmm. Because we need negative ionization to have precipitation.
And clean air.
Yeah.
Oh.
You see what they've done? They've mixed up cause and effect. And with weather, they do the same thing. They say this warm air here caused this storm here. Well, no, in fact, the orgone energy of the atmosphere caused both the change of temperature of air and the storm. Its energy is the root of everything.
So what I believe the ether to be, I've talked about this in multiple other videos, it's our gases such as nitrogen, oxygen, even carbon dioxide and helium, hydrogen, and based on different pressures and temperatures and densities, whatever you're going to call it, as these gases heat and expand, they are losing like their electrical charges and they're becoming ionized, like I said, and they do rise, and that is an ionized, like, and so you do have it where you remove the electrical charges from the electrons from things like helium and hydrogen, etc. This does create what I think to be the radiation belts, two belts, toroidal fields, hyperboloids that make this up. But like again, you've got that distinct like they're distinct belts, or again, like I like to say, toroidal fields or these radiation belts. That it's largely comprised of these ionized gases. And that's all I'll say about that for now. And then the weather patterns that we're seeing, right? When we have the luminaries that are moving above us, closer and within the firmament, closer than we're being led to believe. And again, within this contained environment, the luminaries, especially the sun and the moon, when they do travel within their circular path above us, it does create varying weather pattern changes, and including even in some areas that the sun travels over above, causing things like hurricanes and cyclones and stuff like that as well. There's also weather modification happening even on platforms within the sea, off of sea vessels of varying degrees, where and explosions that are being dispersed on the waters. And then there's these EMP, EMF, like the radiological fallout, or whatever you want to call it, that does emit and it moves like throughout like large areas. Actually, I'm going to show another thing I was supposed to show last week when I was talking about nuclear stuff, because I was talking about the planning guidance for response to a nuclear detonation. Updated 2023, but the original I think was 2002 or something like that. 2009. Way off. Yeah, and I do believe that when I was in Hawaii in 2018, there was that nuclear ballistic threat warning that was received on cell phones and emergency alert stations and stuff like that. And there was a good 37 minutes where we thought there was an oncoming nuclear explosion, and it was fine. Okay, I've got to scroll through a lot of things here. It's just important information I want to share. Yeah, so they show that the training exercises that we've done for the emergency alerts, like it was very similar to what was happening in 2018, and that was apparently an accident. It talks about ground bursts versus air bursts for impact zones. I've shared this before, but I just want to show, oh, no, I went through it. Okay, so what are detonation yields? Because I was saying that when they talk about nuclear explosions, they always do the comparison with TNT and higher quantities of TNT. So I'm just showing you that this is not coming out of my ass. It's literally in multiple different documents coming from the government or people that work with the government. Even a small nuclear detonation produces an explosion far surpassing that of conventional explosives. It would take 1,000 tons of TNT to release the same energy created by the fission of all the atoms in just 2 ounces of uranium. The magnitude or yield of, and again, like way more research needs to be put in that, and how nuclear energy can be seen as another energy source that can supplement or augment electrical energy, magnetic energy. Well, I think it is magnetic energy, but electrical energy and oil. Anyways, wrong browser. Anyways. The magnitude or yield of a nuclear explosion is quantified in terms of the equivalent amount is quantified in terms of the equivalent amount of TNT, a chemical explosive, it would take to create the same energy release. So like I said, they use TNT as a comparable. And then even for the fallout, the follow-on impacts of an explosion, it's they say it's comparable to TNT. Why is that? Sphere damage zones. I was also talking about the blast, what it looks like and what's formed. Call them mushroom clouds. Updraft through center of toroid, stem. This is an example mushroom-shaped cloud from a near-surface nuclear detonation derived from Gladstone and Dolan in 1977. Toroidal circulation of hot gases, cool air being drawn up into the cloud. And so I just wanted to show that because I was talking about that. It's very interesting to me, just like even the shape that these explosions make being toroidal fields. And I'm saying that this is radiating magnetic ionized particles causing these blasts and the follow-on effects of the EMPs, the EMFs, the like impacting electrical equipment.
There are two opposing energies, and Wilhelm Reich, the man who scientifically discovered orgone energy. I say scientifically because the ancient cultures knew about it for thousands of years. They called it chi or prana, whatever. But he created two terms. OR, which is short for orgone energy, and DOR, which was his abbreviation for deadly energy, positively ionizing radiation. And so we'll use OR and DOR interchangeably when we talk, just kind of in passing. So I wanted to just put those definitions out there because
it's the good and the bad.
Yeah.
It's basically like good and evil. It's
But
that
the
simple.
positive is the bad one.
Yes, because and that's the confusing thing. Well, it's positive ion.
everything's
So
just to make it more confusing for
well, I don't want it to be confusing,
No,
but
no.
orgone energy is life-giving, but negative ions are part of that. Like a Himalayan salt lamp that produces negative ions, or you go to the beach and you feel good because of the negative ions. So orgone energy is negatively ionizing. Deadly radiation, the DOR, is positively ionizing. And those positive ions are what makes us feel agitated, unwell. It's actually the radiation that comes from cell phones, wireless devices.
Yeah, all wireless. Yeah. And of course, cell phone towers are.
Some, what we can classify sort of in the radiation umbrella, there's also healing energies or healing light and frequencies that heal. And I believe that light, again, is the absence of electrons. I believe that this is some kind of like magnetic radiating, fucking whatever you're gonna call it, energy, and it's also like used in treatments for healing the skin, healing organs, healing at a cellular level. And so, yes and no.
Huge one.
Yeah.
It's scalable.
And I believe the sun is
toxic
healing.
positivity, does the same thing. So I get it. Yeah, it makes sense completely. It's fascinating the work that you guys are doing here. So tell me again, what are they spraying in the sky? Like what is coming out of
I hope they're not watching. I don't mean to sound like I'm contradicting what they're saying. I'm just throwing in my own opinions in this because I will be talking with them today. And I don't want them to think that I'm going to be difficult.
We perception managed to see, because like you said, it is definitely a psychological thing. You look out there and you think, oh, they're spraying. You hear opinions of what they're spraying, and then you think that applies, and then you look up and you go, it does. Is there something being sprayed over me? And you feel, some people can feel powerless. So empower folks.
It's the spraying thing is a big one for people to get past. In
because
the past,
it looks like spraying,
but it doesn't.
Totally
it doesn't look like spraying, except that it stops and starts. I think that's what it is. I think to me, it used to look like spraying, but now it doesn't because I know differently. So when you see like an air show with the old types of planes where they had contrails, like something comes out the back, or an old car that's not working too well that's spewing out, smoke out the back. This is exhaust. We're looking at exhaust. And they've changed it to spraying so that we really feel scared, but it is some kind of exhaust. It is actually some kind of byproduct of their travel. It is not, in fact, a chemical being sprayed. And I know it looks that way, only in terms that it turns off and on. It looks like it turns off and on. But when you use the orgonite and observe it, and you watch the trail, if you have the orgonite out and you're watching the trail, you'll see that it doesn't, in fact, shut on and off, but the orgonite itself disrupts it to where it fades out and fades back in and fades out again. So it's not actually an on-off switch for a spray. You know, I know they want us to think it's spraying, but it is actually some kind of byproduct of the travel. And the travel they're doing up there is DOR based. It's based in deadly energy. They have, for whatever they're doing up there in the upper atmosphere, they have a need for deadly radiation grid on Earth to allow that grid in the sky. The Earth grid of the towers is directly related to the sky grid. And we know that from neutralizing the Earth grid. When you neutralize the Earth grid with these, and we've put thousands of these into the environment at the cell towers throughout the US West, you see that they can't fly. So not only does it starts to break up the trails, but eventually they can't produce them. Where we're living in California, you almost never see what they call a chemtrail anymore at all. But we used to see them all the time. And the more it's getting gifted, the organized getting gifted worldwide, the less people see the trails all the time. The airlines actually admitted recently that we will see an end to chemtrails in 2 to 5 years. We have a video about that on our channel. We pulled the news story and analyzed the video. The airlines are scrambling for an excuse as to why we don't see contrails anymore as much as we used to. And they're claiming to be doing something called contrail avoidance to not make them anymore.
Yeah, but
they don't want people to know that we're erasing them from
in reality, the atmosphere is becoming so negatively ionized that the trails, they can't be up there anymore.
It's becoming high in orgone energy.
Yeah.
And they can't do it. So what you're seeing is not a spraying, but it is some kind of exhaust. And it's some kind of byproduct of a type of travel based in deadly radiation. And I know people think we're just getting on airplanes.
I want to see what I said. I'm talking about chemtrails like in this whole video, but I want to see what this is. Chemtrails, contrails, whatever you want to call them.
Reflect on chemtrailing, but what it tells you is that they're realizing through, obviously what they do is they watch and monitor what people say online.
I'm wearing the
Remember,
same
you have
shirt.
to think of the internet as if it's a part of your consciousness because
I'm wearing the same. No,
people are uploading.
No, I'm wearing my green sweater.
Talking about things that they're thinking about or seeing, and they're sharing this stuff. They're seeing more and more people realizing that, the weather seems a little bit off. It's a little bit warmer in some places than it normally is. Yeah, we see in the summer, obviously, a lot of the droughts, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously, naturally, the more suspicious people get, they're going to eventually stumble upon chemtrailing, cloud seeding, et cetera, Operation Popeye, all the stuff that obviously I've always covered. More people are becoming suspicious of weather manipulation and weather modification. So the propaganda machine known as CNN and the other.
I just wanted to clarify because before I said 3.14159 squared or times 2, whatever. Like I want to just clarify it's 6.283. There's more variable like that numbers after that, but I just wanted to talk about that as well. So even with the 2882 being in sacred gematria circles, April 8th, total eclipse could also be seen as 28 or 82.
The others are going to continue to.
8 times 2 is 16. 6 plus 1 is 7. 7 can also be seen as like what we call like the swastika. When you have like with the North Pole Star and the Big Dipper, like during the various equinoxes and solstices, it does like a certain pattern that looks like a swastika in the sky, and it looks like a 7. And so anyone that uses the representation of 7, I also think it's because of that. And that is not possible if we were spinning and rotating and whirling through space and all of these other fucking luminaries doing the same thing and like billions and trillions of light years away or millions of light years, all impossible shit.
Have to put out garbage like this so that they could make sure that the zombies out there stay zombified. Listen to this hilarious article. The truth behind those white streaks trailing behind jets in the sky. We've all
Rorian, I don't want to single you out. Are you a flat earther or a globe earther? It doesn't matter either way. I'm just genuinely curious. And if you are a globe earther, what is the biggest reason why?
seen those white streaks trailing behind jets, creating stripes against the blue sky. The lines are called contrails, short for condensation trails, and they appear when water vapor condenses and freezes around the exhaust from an aircraft, according to
actually, no, I think you are a flat earther. Never mind. Sorry. I'm fairly certain you are. It doesn't matter if you were or not. You bring good, valuable content and comments to the page, so it wouldn't matter to me anyway. That's the thing too. Like even with political parties, like I know people personally that vote differently, and they don't identify with their political parties. Like they just so happen to vote every once in a while in their opinion, and like during voting time, they're like, okay, so differently. Like I don't think that we're better than you.
University Corporation for Atmospheric Research. I love how it's called University Corporation. At least that's what science tells us. In recent, is that what science tells us? Or is that what the propaganda machine tells us? Because water vapor.
Dude, the contrails, like there's so there's a difference between contrails and chemtrails. And so contrails we can see at the lower levels. It's the chemtrails that are being dispersed at the higher levels, like you're talking about November. And so, you know, and so people don't understand that they see like what they're looking at in the sky that we're seeing like visually. They're mistaking that. Well, I mean, there's an argument for those possibly being chemtrails as well, because what do you define a chemtrail, right? Like is silver iodide, is aluminum oxide? Are they? Do you consider that those chemical compositions compounds? Do you consider that because even water can be considered a chemical compound? And so. And these are things that are irritants. They cause neurological disorders, respiratory issues, and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm just there are chemicals, there are toxins that are being dispersed at the higher levels. I'm not disputing that. That's a fact. You're completely right. And there's also weather modification, geoengineering using HARP and CERN and EMFs and sonar, like frequencies like throughout the atmos, whatever you want to friggin' call it, that are also causing these particles or whatever you want to call it to be dispersed over longer distances so that there's more impact, more coverage. And it's very interesting stuff.
Does not cause a blue sky day to turn into a gray sky all day. Okay. And why are all these?
I understand where Mark's coming from. I will date. I don't need nothing but flirts moving forward. It's just too much of a fucking different of our perception of reality, if that makes any sense. Like it's just too beyond. It's just too different, and it would be an absolute issue for me because like it would just be exhausting to try to explain things that someone's going to refuse to. And there's been so many relationships that have failed because of this as well. Like especially in the last couple of years when people have woken up, divorces and everything because of this. And yeah, so like I wouldn't either.
These planes flying around just dropping water vapor all of a sudden because the skies didn't look like this in the 80s and 90s, and there was a lot of aircraft, right? But they want to tell you that it's contrails. So at least that's what science says, according to CNN. In recent years, a growing number of people believe that these contrails are actually chemtrails, a well-established conspiracy theory asserting that these trails aren't made from condensation at all, but are instead chemicals being sprayed by the government. Though the theory may sound far-fetched to some, chemtrails have become a
chemtrails, contrails, and I've shared the proof. Like even in Red Deer, Alberta, they have they did not willingly. They openly admitted that they do the contrail dispersals. They do the geoengineering stuff too, weather modification, using aluminum oxide and silver iodide. And they only just in the last, this was just in the last few days. And again, this is what I'm saying. It's convenient. And these are insurance companies that hired nonprofit organizations to do this. And so is that considered to be government? They're government funded. We're paying for our airspace to be poisoned. And then also, sorry, I just swore again. And so like these access to information requests that I put through, I'm getting also about like interference with what we're calling satellites in space, but it's in airspace. So satellites that are disrupting other like that are being struck down, like even in Russia. So like fuck. Anyway, so in Russia, in their airspace, they shot down a satellite in space, and so what they're calling space is actually airspace. So within this contained environment, within this cosmos, whatever you want to call it. So this is just so that I'm telling him, because he's a globe earther too. I'm like, okay, so you realize that the satellite that then the strike that Russia did in 2017, whatever it was, blah blah blah. I'm like, you realize that like that's our airspace, and he's like, yeah. And so I think at some point in the next year, I think he's gonna be a flat earther. I think that like I'm planting seeds.
Common conspiracy both in the US and around the world, despite evidence to the contrary. So I was actually thinking about this today, which is funny. This morning,
how do we get around?
I saw a chemtrail fly right above early in the morning, way before.
Because even with these access to information requests, like when we were asking specifically about the Canadian Armed Forces, and if the Air Force knew, if the Canadian Armed Forces, we asked if they know about what's going on and like and what chemicals they're dispersing and all this stuff, and they're saying the Canadian Armed Forces does not. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't believe that, but if they don't, that's fine. Who is? And if there are other organizations or institutions, whether they be government subsidized or government funded or not for profit or not, I don't care. Who are they? Why are they doing this fucking stuff in my fucking airspace? And why doesn't the Chief of Defense Staff, why does the Chief of Defense Staff of the Canadian Armed Forces not know what's happening in our own space, in our own airspace? How does he not know this? How does he not know what's going on? Because again, he's fucking clueless. And that's another reason why he should be fired and in jail.
When I saw this article, I started thinking to myself about chemtrails and about if we actually had scientists, which we've had, who have gotten the chemicals out of those planes, whether they're taking it off of a truck below or something, that it's shedding onto below.
It specifically said satellite, so it didn't say weather balloon. But I wanted to talk about that because the weather balloon, the alleged weather balloon from China, like this fucking stuff they come up with, like this was a satellite. And there was also other satellites that were attached to balloons that were fucking all over the world that were also being discovered, and they've crash landed in areas, and it's been discovered. Like, it's just, Eddie Bravo, we need to fucking talk. He did, this is what I mean. Like, he did episode 100 or episode 101 just the last few days. And I wanted to friggin' get on episode 102. Like, oh my God. And so he probably already did that fucking episode. I would have liked that goddamn episode. It is what it is.
Below,
maybe get me on 120 then. Get me on 120. Write to him. And I'm just kidding.
Essentially could be our own skin because they're shedding it onto us. And I use the word shedding for obvious reasons. But where is the actual evidence of proof other than them telling us that they say so? Now, we don't need this because we've seen it before. If you watch those old C-SPAN clips, many people coming to Congress with concerns about the dangers of chemtrailing. But I love how they say it sounds far-fetched. Who does it sound far-fetched to? What kind of an idiot are we dealing with here when we're talking about people who actually believe CNN, NBC, and CBS and all these mainstream media? We're talking about just a different breed of moron. Because for them to believe without actual evidence is exactly what they're doing here. Because they're saying despite evidence to the contrary. They provide no evidence at all, except telling us this stuff and then putting the word science in the article. Despite telling us that this evidence and these studies are from a university corporation for atmospheric research. So there's your corporation, which just proves to you that this, again, is communism. So what is the chemtrail conspiracy theory? This according to CNN. The chemtrails idea has been around since 1996 and is largely rooted in an Air Force research paper from the same year. Quote, weather as a force multiplier, owning the weather in 2020.
I don't know about that. I'm going to keep this video going, but like I've shown like the weather patterns, the dispersal patterns that have been implemented and even like the proof that they've like shown and demonstrate that they can create rain and stuff like that, even in the early 1900s. Patents as early as the 1800s. So not the 1960s, 70s, or 80s at all, like 100 years before that. And that's just during this cycle of life that we know about. There's been like more advanced civilizations, societies. This could have happened 1,000 years ago, and we just don't know about it.
5, end quote. It outlines a future weather modification system to achieve military objectives using aerospace forces, and does not reflect current military policy, practice, or capability, the Environmental Protection Agency has stated. So, yeah, I'm sure somebody just randomly, put this out there. Now, we don't even need a research document from the Air Force to tell us about this, because we can use this thing called our own eyes. We can also see all these differences in our society as far as illnesses, spikes in cancer, people not being able to have babies. What else can we see here? We could also maybe look at the effects of barium and aluminum on the human skin or in the air or the air quality. We could also look at the temperature changes, because we know that they're geoengineering and cloud seeding to also be able to manipulate the weather. We can go back to Operation Popeye, all these other things. But they just want to tell you that now there's a research paper out there and it states the year 2025. So they want to make sure you don't get suspicious, since we're coming up on 2025 and our government is telling us that we need to give up our rights and have a carbon tax. Yeah. Anyone out there that's reading this and is not waking up? What?
Canada has a carbon tax, not Americans. And they're looking at increasing it by, not they, Justin Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau's son, is looking at increasing it on April Fool's Day by 23%. The 2 divided by 3.66. Anyway, all that shit, like, fuck this guy. Jail, please. Peaceful. Polite. Throw him in fucking jail. 10,000 fucking years.
What more is it really going to take? I mean, they're so nervous that they put these articles out there. Not because it's clickbait. They have to spin actual truth with their that's how the propaganda machine works. That's why we just saw an article 2 weeks ago that I put up here on the website about the Georgia Guidestones. That's why whenever we talk, how about John Cena? They just came out with a story. If you saw my video on John Cena and the Oscars, the humiliation ritual. They just put articles out there calling it a humiliation ritual, saying it's a conspiracy theory.
And they got blasted like 3:30 in the morning or 3:33 in the morning or whatever it was. Like the 33 was in that.
I mean, wouldn't you just live and let live? You wouldn't even bring attention to this stuff, but they have to bring attention to it because they know that people are waking up to what's going on. So they need to put a defense wall in between that so that these stories pop up before any stories about truth, about what chemtrails really are and how the climate scam is based on chemtrailing, cloud seeding, and weather modification / manipulation. So they say at its most basic, the chemtrail conspiracy theory says that contrails are not created by water vapor at all, but instead are a sign that the government, the wealthy, or some mix of the two is secretly putting toxic chemicals into the air, creating these white lines. Ideas about the purpose of these supposed toxic chemtrails vary. Some believe the chemicals are being used to poison humanity.
Sorry, I just got back on Rumble and I missed a lot of comments. But even with the swastika, yeah, like it used to represent so much more than what it's been perverted to look like now, even with 60. So there's been things that have been unfortunately off of the astrotheosophy with Polaris and the
California, Berkeley, who conducted a 2021 study exploring the chemtrail conspiracy theory and interviewing 20 believers and former believers.
Yep. This was a good point. They want to block the heat in, not out, with the chemtrails to create global warming to justify more chemtrailing. Like I've said this before. I keep on saying that I don't have to say that, but where if the heat is not able to rise and get beyond like the barriers that are being created by these particles, the surface temperature is going to increase more, right? It's not being able to expand and be released into the atmosphere within this contained environment, but above. And so this is where we're getting more of an impact on the heat, and then also possibly these particles like reflecting more light, unfortunately, and ergo more heat onto the surface of the earth as well, which is a large percentage of these heat signatures that we're experiencing.
Individuals pick and choose aspects that resonate with them.
Yeah.
Mixing in person.
So with that, I love that. Yeah. So I've showed this in previous videos, so I don't want to be too redundant, but I will say that where CERN operates, where HARP operates, and where these are being dispersed, it's causing there to be they're making it where the sun's rays are reflecting in a way that's creating more heat in these areas. And if you look at the overlays that I've shown, like and the heat temperature variations and stuff like that, the most extreme heat temperature gradients are in the areas where these are being fucked with, like where there's HARP, where there's CERN, or where there's like areas where they're doing this stuff. And so it is that's why we need to talk about this stuff, right? Like, why are you spraying this stuff? Where are you spraying it? Please fucking stop, you crazy maniacs. Thank you, bye. You know, like just why aren't we, like, what the fuck? Stop doing it, please. Like, come on.
Personal interpretations or selectively adopting parts of the theory. First of all, breaking that whole paragraph down.
And they're causing these extreme heat disasters, and then even with dews and stuff like that, and like they're fucking blaming us. And I still, like, my mind is blown on a daily basis with just how fucking crazy reality is. This is why I don't watch TV. This is why I don't have fucking satellite TV or cable or any of that fucking stuff, because I don't need it, because life is enough. It's fucking enough. Like, you know.
Has anybody ever heard of somebody who was a former believer of chemtrails? We've heard of like all these things they tried to do with like, they were so, you know, the mainstream media likes to pull that stuff with the Q nonsense, the CIA Q operation, and say, now so-and-so was sucked into Q. Then they came out and, they're healthier and better. Who has ever met somebody who was like, I used to believe those were chemtrails, but now I'm convinced that they're not? Kind of quite the opposite. This is how full-on propaganda works, of course. The way they word this is specifically done. Some believe the chemicals are being used to poison humanity. Others say it's for mind control. And some think it's a way.
Dutch Sensei, Dutchsinse. Really, people like look at like his work. Look at some of my previous videos on chemtrails and contrails. Like, you'll see the maps and the diagrams and the overlays I'm talking about.
For the government to control the weather. Well, it's all the above. But again, when they word it like that, they know that people are automatically going to put up a defense mechanism and go, it's too much for me to process. That's too confusing. What? How would it do that? I don't even care. These people are conspiracy theorists. Meanwhile, if they only realized what was going on, they wouldn't be so miserable in their day-to-day lives, because they realize that the government has been messing with them
or
psychologically now for a good 2 decades.
Or not the government, or people that the government's just not tracking, and that they should be tracking. Or that they're hiring.
Now, that doesn't mean they weren't doing it beforehand. But every single day for the last 20 years or so, they have been taking this mind control operation of theirs to new extremes. So this goes on to say, how did the chemtrail conspiracy theory take off? The idea that the government spraying humanity with chemicals isn't completely without base. Oh, really? During the Cold War, the British government conducted more than 750 mock chemical warfare attacks on the general public, according to researchers. This subjected hundreds of thousands of people to zinc sulfide, a chemical chosen due to its small size. It's similar to that of germs, and because it glows under ultraviolet light, making it easy to trace, the chemical was thought to be non-toxic at the time.
Zinc oxide glowing under ultraviolet light. So you've got the spectrum of visible and non-visible light, infrared to ultraviolet on the spectrums for the non-visible light, and then you've got the red to the violet for the visible.
Though repeated exposure could be cancer. The U.S. did the same in the 1950s and 60s, using the chemical as a tracer to test the dispersion of biological weapons. Okay, so now they're admitting that they've done this before and they have the ability to do it. And even give you specifics about how it could make somebody, or it could give somebody exposure, which could lead to cancer, right? So they're admitting. So what would make a common person out there think that they're not doing it anymore because they've come out and given us their word? Because they've come out and said, oh, well, we did it in the 50s, but we're not doing it now. Does anything that the government's doing on either side show you that they give a crap about any of us? Democrat or Republican, Christian or atheist, anybody, gay or straight, male or female, black or white? No. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They literally are trying to get people to kill themselves with vaccines, which is working. And now they're telling you that, America did do.
Again, this guy's great. Like, it's dramatic. Like, do people want to actually kill us, or is that just an outcome or a result they're willing to accept because they're not considering that in their profit margins and stuff like that with what they're doing. I've had people where I've shown on the record where they've said they're not looking at the social outcomes for things that they're pushing or marketing or advertising, things like that. They don't care about the societal outcomes. They care about profits. And so if that is not a fucking red flag, I don't know what is. And so like that's what they're telling us. Like I want to push this because I want to fucking make money. Money is my God. Money is my savior. Money is what I want. Money is my cult. And I don't care who dies. Unfortunately, like it's not that I like that you're dying. Maybe I don't like it, but I like money more, and I like my lifestyle more than I dislike you dying, if that makes any sense. And I'm talking about if I was a psychopath, that's how I would think, but I'm not a psychopath, so I'm trying to call this out.
Some of this testing in the 50s and 60s. So now your brain should automatically be going, oh, wait a minute. So these people were saying that you're chemtrail, you've done it before. So why would we act? So how are we supposed to know you're not doing it now? Because you give us your word. These are the same people, right? They give you your word. They tell you they don't clone, even though they have the technology to do it. All right. They tell you don't do MK Ultra anymore on civilians, even though they've done it before. So they do all these experiments. What was the point of doing it? Oh, for biological warfare with other countries, right? And everybody went along with it. Like, oh, okay, our government's doing this stuff just in case we go to war with Russia, right? How much longer do you need to hear that narrative to realize that they were doing the experimentation so that the globalists could go to war with their civilians? And that's what they're doing right now. And it's live right now, okay? They weren't experimenting with this because it's the same thing with the nuke. It's like, oh, they've got a nuke, right? And they keep you in fear of the nuke. Yep. Why wouldn't somebody have used a nuke by now? Why would Russia not use a nuke on Ukraine? What? Because they're trying to be nice and not use a nuke?
Let's talk about nukes, and everyone's saying, but what about Hiroshima and Nagasaki? What about Japan? What about all of that? Like, what about all this stuff and like the end of World War fucking II because America dropped these fucking bombs like Big Ben and like, anyways, but fucking false news, guys, bro, possibly, allegedly, and these could have been just like a lot of fucking TNT or like higher levels of explosives that were used, not just in ports and harbor areas, but also carpet bombings happening throughout as well during these periods of time. And Japan did not want to surrender at that time. They're like during that time, they didn't have any meetings. They didn't rush to fucking like whatever. It was literally when Russia sent a letter to Japan during that fucking time. When they received it, within hours of that, they like the leadership like got everyone together, and then they said that they were going to stop. It had nothing to do with what they're alleged to be atomic bombs, and had everything to do with Russia, believe it or not. And again, like whatever you think about them now, I don't give a fuck. I'm just telling you facts. Okay. And by the way, in World War II, they were on our fucking side too. Mind blown. Anyway, again, hit or miss, because like depends on like, because the Bolsheviks, no. The leadership, no. There are people that are puppets that fill roles within government that are pushing these wars and these military, pharmaceutical, industrial complex false flags in order to get us involved in, again, distractions that profit them. And so, where was I going with this stuff? With nukes, I don't really buy the fear around it either necessarily. And even when I've looked at nuclear readiness doctrine and PAMs, by the way, that I've given for the last several years to all levels of fucking government, saying you need to look at this stuff. Like when I was looking at this and making my assessments, I was noticing that, and I've shared this in previous videos, that when you look at the damage and the explosive capabilities, they're comparing it with TNT always. So why are they doing that? Why are they always comparing the nuclear capabilities and the impact and the destruction and the blast zones and stuff like that, and all of that? Why are they comparing it with TNT? Just interesting, right? So like, just ask these questions. Why? And then there's also even subsequent radiation fallout. These are very real. The EMP, the EMF damage and stuff like that, destruction like from the blast and stuff like that are felt for long distances. And that's what they also could possibly be linked with these false Carrington events that cause outages and stuff like that as well. It could possibly be because of these events. November, I'm not sharing that. That's funny though.
You're at war with another country. Wouldn't you wipe them out as quickly as possible without having to kill off your military or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, nobody's thinking. And this is part of what the chemtrailing has done. In addition to the fluoridization of the water, the chemtrailing is making people in a fog, a haze. They're walking around like in the London.
That's what I love about like doing these videos. That's why I spend more time on videos than I should. It's because like things aren't real. You know,
The article, hey, the government's experimented before with chemtrail. So now they're telling you they've done it, which is illegal. These are illegal activities that the government is doing on citizens. And still these idiots think that these people who are killing you with a smile actually give a crap about you. And they show us day in and day out. Not only do they not care about us, they want to make sure that they curb stomp us and take our rights away at the same time. Goodness gracious. So this goes on to say, though these tests were done decades ago, the theory has flourished so much so that in 2016, the EPA published a 14-page document explaining contrails, outlining the chemicals used by the Air Force, and attempting to dispute the conspiracy. In 2021, a Facebook post went viral claiming that Joe Biden manipulated the weather.
Yeah, insane. Sorry, I was just gonna get a snack here. Absolutely wild. Even with COVID and the mandates and the pandemic and everything, and the wars, it's to keep us in fear. And even then, like with this nuke fear, they had fucking kids like doing these like nuke preparedness protocols and all these crazy things. Like as a fucking child, how traumatic is that? In the 60s, 70s, and 80s and stuff like that, crazy stuff. Of like and children. I've done courses on childhood development, psychology, and influenceable. Looking at you, like the government and the education and the. I've been smoking pot, though. I'm not gonna lie.
Of course, what's happened to people in Maui is absolutely horrific and tragic, and it can happen to any one of us at any second. But there's no positives. I shouldn't say that. But one of the things that came out of Maui is that people started to realize that that climate change wasn't real because they didn't buy that narrative. And they started realizing that the government had gone rogue and that weather manipulation was real because the deeper they went into research with direct energy weapons, they started realizing about DARPA, they started realizing about HARP. And the next thing you know, they start going, okay, the government has turned on the civilians, right?
Yep.
So we can look at some of these weather events. We can look at those fires in California a couple of years ago. We look at the Maui fires. We look at the one that just happened in Texas. And people are waking up. And they're seeing the stuff with the tornadoes in middle America and them trying to go, oh, it's climate change. Then they're going, wait a minute. Oh, I saw that guy call for an uprising. Didn't he have a video and lots of videos about weather modification, weather manipulation like 5-10 years ago? Now it's starting to ring a bell because now people are starting to see that the government is weaponizing the weather, right? So they're coming out with stuff like this and they're going, oh, a Facebook post went viral, right? Yeah, and that's exactly why the government has put their foot down on social media because they realize that their propaganda machine is having a tough time fighting truth that's coming out of the mouths of people like you and me. That their propaganda machine, people trained at Tavistock, are doing such a poor job that people like me and you are actually waking people up to what's going on. When they probably initially thought that their trained operatives in the news media were going to be all that it took. They were like, oh, they're trained. They'll be able to manipulate people and all this stuff. But people like us are breaking them from the spell, not by needing to use manipulation, by using flat out truth, which is what they fear the most. So this goes on to say on X, thousands of people follow accounts dedicated to tracking and posting proof of chemtrails. One 2017 study, which had a nationally responsive representative sample of 1,000 people, found that 10% of Americans believe the conspiracy completely, while upwards of 30% of Americans at least found it somewhat true. That's 40% of people, right? You take the 10% who believe it and 30% of people who are indifferent about it, which shows you they only have the minds of 60%. Now, do I actually believe their stuff?
For those that I finished my snack now. I don't like to be rude and eat while I'm on camera, but sometimes it happens. Anyway, blue, like over them, and blue is the only color that's not impacted for the visible light spectrum. And so that's why, like, I have like blue curtains in here, and so if anything happens, I'm just gonna freaking like rip them down, and like just like freaking open them up and be like, fuck. He doesn't control anything, and keep us distracted, divided, all that. When you're talking about the fucking ice cream and
that, it's actually probably less than that because the most of the people I talk to, they never look up. And once they look up and you start bringing it to their attention, it's a lot for them to handle. It's the same as the human sacrifice and satanic ritual abuse. It's a lot for them to process, which is why I always reference peeling an onion. You got to pull them out of this in layers. You can't just start by saying, hey, they rape babies and drink the blood of children, because their brains can't process it. They're like, whoa. Yeah. Not only do they think you're crazy, they can't physically process it. So with chemtrails.
And you know what pisses me off about that? Like, Jacob Chainsley or whatever his name was, the Freedom Shaman or whatever his name was, he was fucking jailed and arrested, and he was baited. He was suckered into being a fucking pawn for this. They wanted to push a riot, incite violence, all of this stuff. Like, people again within government, like, out of their fucking minds to do that. And he was peaceful. And he was even escorted throughout Capitol by law enforcement, and even thanked them and prayed like at the center of the floor of the Capitol, and thanked the law enforcement and stuff like that. And then he was fucking jailed. And Jacob Chainsley was that the shaman guy, the veteran shaman guy that was wearing the Braveheart costume. Arrested. I'm saying this because fast forward in the last few months, whatever it was, we have members of government and members of the Senate who fucked people in the ass. And yes, I'm being very explicit. Like, I'm on age restriction here, like YouTube. It's 18 over. It's a default setting I have. Like, no fucking kids allowed. And so people are allowed to desecrate Senate and fuck people in the ass and show a pornographic fucking video of the Capitol within the Capitol. And it was fine. That was okay. No one got arrested for that. I would have preferred that get you arrested than a peaceful fucking protest and getting escorted through a Capitol building and stuff like that. And so this is what I mean, like the nerve. And then even a trans person showing his breasts. Washington, D.C. at the fucking Capitol. Again, like, what is wrong with these people? What is wrong with these people? Like, are you so perverted in your own? Like, I don't understand it. It's individuals. And that's totally fine. Totally fine.
It takes time. First, they need to notice the trails. That's where it starts. They need to just notice it. Gross. And then you try to get these people to notice it every day, to look up all the time, and then count how many days they see a blue sky versus not. Then their brain will start to go a little bit. Then you could take them from there and start giving them the deep dives with all of the stuff that I've covered and shown you guys in videos before of, even Disney releasing videos on weather modification, Operation Popeye. You go to HARP, you can go into some of the stuff in Congress where they've talked about chemtrailing, et cetera, et cetera. So this goes on to say social media's algorithmic structure means people see information that reinforces their existing beliefs. Ex-believers interviewed attributed their ongoing belief in part to the sheer amount of pro-conspiracy information on their social media feeds. And again, that's just their way of trying to brainwash people into thinking that the people who are waking up to this are really the ones brainwashed. Very obvious mind control tactic, right? But the reality of the matter is that they're having a tough time suppressing this the way that they want to, because they're so cocky. Their actors suck. Their newscasters are atrocious. And that's why you see them get rotated a lot. These guys like Brian Stelter, they get rotated out because once they become laughing stocks.
But I have been cheated on all that stuff by people, and to settle down or commit to any and cooks and cleans and does that as well. Those roles, that's not appealing.
Well, then we look at the vaccines too. Instead, people just think that this is with the advancements in technology. Why? It's not just like pick and choose on CNN what's real and what's not. Why you see all these ideas, they plant seeds in your head. They push this type of stuff. So those stories, there might be true ones.
I'm going to go into my. That's just one of the benefits of being in. This is a long one. Let's see what I said here. It is Friday, the 22nd of December, 2023. Friday! And this is my first time going live.
in front of my mother still, even though I'm in my 40s, talking about it more from us. Oh, like, I need to stop with the swearing, especially since I'm going to be seeing my family for the Christmas holidays, and I a diaper, so I still want to set a good example.
Phenomenon called Chem Trails, now getting widespread attention. Well, tonight,
And she's gorgeous.
KSLA News 12 investigation reporter Jeff Farrell shows us the results of testing we had done about what's in our skies.
It seemed like some mornings it was just crisscrossing the whole sky. It was just like a giant checkerboard.
Bill Nichols snapped several photos of the strange clouds from his home in Stamps, Arkansas. They begin as normal contrails from a jet engine, but do not fade away like a normal contrail. Soon after, he saw particles in the air.
You know, because we'd see it drop to the ground in a haze.
Nichols then noticed the material collecting on the ground.
This is water and stuff that I collected in bowls. I had it set out in my backyard on my dad's pickup truck.
KSLA News 12 had the sample tested at a lab. The results? A high level of barium, 6.8 parts per million, more than 3 times the toxic level set by the EPA.
Armed with these lab results about the high levels of barium found in our sample, we decided to contact the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. They told us that yes, these levels are very unusual, but at the same time, they added the caveat that proving the source is a whole nother matter.
Barium is a hallmark of other chemtrail testing, which even attracted attention from a Los Angeles TV station. There's already no shortage of unclassified weather modification programs by the government. But those who fear chemtrails could be secret biological or chemical testing on the public point to the 1977 Senate hearings in particular, which confirmed 239 populated areas had been contaminated with biological agents between 1949 and 1969. Later, the 1994 Rockefeller Report concluded hundreds of thousands of military personnel were also subjected to secret biological experiments over the last 60 years. But could secret testing be underway yet again?
I'd rather it be something inert and benign, something that's, not causing any damage, but I'd like to know what it is.
KSLA News 12 discovered chemtrails are even mentioned by name in the initial draft of House Bill 2977 back in 2001 under the Space Preservation Act. But the military denies any such program exists. Jeff Farrell, KSLA News 12 reporting.
And, it turns out until 9 years ago, the government had the right under U.S. law to conduct secret testing on the American public under specific conditions. Only a public outcry repealed part of that law with some exceptions.
Now, Jeff's report mentioned high levels of barium linked to those alleged chemtrails. We wanted to find out exactly what effects barium has on the body. We spoke with Mark Ryan, the director of the Poison Control Center. Ryan tells KSLA News 12 that short-term exposure can lead to anything from stomach to chest pains. Long-term exposure causes blood pressure problems. Ryan addressed concerns by chemtrail researchers that barium could be meant to wear down a person's immune system.
Anything that
could be meant to wear down a person's immune system. Exposure causes blood pressure problems. Ryan addressed concerns by chemtrail researchers that barium could be meant to wear down a person's immune system.
Anything that causes or affects the body long-term chronically is going to affect your ability because it's constantly working on the body. So from that aspect, yeah, that's a potential.
Substance.
Yep. And aluminum oxide and these other particles that they're dropping in the air. This is confirmed. We need to get access to information requests in. I'm actually going to ask someone again today for that to see what chemicals are DND, so Department of National Defense, Canadian Armed Forces, what chemicals they're purchasing and corporations that work in and around them, and in agriculture and stuff like that as well, and see what quantity or percentage of these of boron and friggin' aluminum oxide and all these other harmful chemicals, how much of it is actually being purchased and released quarterly and annually. We have a right to have access to that information because we're paying for it. So I'll go on to my next video. So this is one that I shared 4 months ago again.
Yeah, this is the mineral light in mineral? Is that how it? Is that how it? What would you say? How did it? What's the origin of it? You see, when they first found petroleum, because they were beginning to make motors and needed it on axles of wheels on railroad trains and all that sort of thing. And remember, trains started at the beginning of the 19th century.
Oh yeah, this is Fletcher Party. I'm gonna skip through this to see if there's anything else on contrails that I share in this video. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so physicists to National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA. Oh, he's talking about, yeah.
If you can find a cosmetic product that doesn't contain toxins and cancer-causing chemicals.
Geez, can you give me a hint?
Sorry, cosmetic companies don't always have to tell you if they contain toxins. What? That's just the way the game works here. And it's how the game is played for you ladies playing along at home. Go, Jackie, you lose. You poisoned yourself.
You poisoned yourself. Okay, I did want to show the video from Expanding Reality, and I'm already so long into this. I'm also waiting for a full quart of wood to arrive, and then I'm going to be stocking and piling wood for the winter for a bit. I'm going to stock it in, like, it's very precise. I don't like stacking it like the face boards where it's like all in like a row. And I want to do it where it's like 2 pieces down, 2 pieces up, and then the opposite, 2 pieces up, 2 pieces down, and then stack it upwards on my front deck. So where it's away from the elements. So if it snows, it's not going to touch the wood. But anyway.
Planes up there and flying around the traditional way.
So once he comes with the wood, I'm going to have to get off this show anyways.
But there's a whole other type of flight going on up there that we're not being told about what it actually is.
I like to think of them as litmus paper. You know, you dip it in something that's acidic or basic, and you can tell, where it is on the pH scale. Well, the trails are an indicator of the energetic health of the atmosphere in any given location. If the trails are sticking and spreading out, the atmosphere is very DOR-ish, and air pollution is held in. It's lingering. It's not the earth isn't able to clear it and cleanse it as it naturally does. But here in California, when it's very OR-ish atmosphere, the trails can't stick at all. Pollution it's the same amount of pollution as the previous day, but it gets swept away.
Or they can't do it at all anymore. We've gotten to the point where they're not even up there. So it not only removes the pollution, but it seems to remove the planes. So that brings up a whole lot of other questions, And
that's a show unto itself, that one.
That's what we've been studying lately is, well, where did the planes go? And now the airlines are coming up with some big excuses for why it's so different now.
So much, guys, so much.
Yeah, it's a big topic, and we've already gone so far into it. So you're finding out about this 10 years in to the discoveries we've made. So you're getting like the most updated version.
I love this. No, you get, and y'all are hooted. This is perfect. This is so cool. So again, guys, all the ways to find them, Chembo.com, link down below. So with the images that we have seen, are they just simply images of tanks on planes with funnels and nozzles spraying out like modified crop dusters?
Yes.
They're just simply images. I wouldn't worry about the images on the internet. There's all kinds of stuff that can be generated.
AI generated.
Or CGI. Or
psychologically. You wouldn't want your president walking around on a plane with all the pilots and masks and stuff to seem like you're the one that's scary and can do anything they want, right?
Well, it's total BS, and they feed us a whole lot of BS all the time. I mean, the news stories, if you look at the headlines of the day, it's like more than half of them are fake. There's a little truth in there, but you have to decipher it. I mostly look at weather news all the time, and it's unbelievable, all the fakery in there. And the more you know about weather and the more you studied it, the more you know just how much BS there is. It's all pseudoscience, especially if you know about orgonomy, the true science of weather. Meteorology is an antiquated, completely outdated science of weather. It needs to be thrown out. orgonomy is the true science of weather. Meteorology is simply the effects of orgonomy.
And the study of the effects. Orgonomy is the study of the cause.
You can keep meteorology just in terms of being able to measure rainfall amounts, and you want to know the air pressure and all these different things. But to know the cause of all of that, you have to go to the energetic root, which is orgonomy. Wilhelm Reich discovered this, the true science of weather, in the 50s. And he wasn't just suppressed. I mean, he was put in jail, and he died in jail at the age of 60 for his discoveries, because he was using orgone energy to cure cancer and to end drought. He was using it for these things that would just change the world, and they didn't want us to know this stuff.
So much so they...
I'm just going to go back. To orgone. Concept variously described as an esoteric energy. So when you look into what an esoteric energy is, it's giving us a definition. Proponents and practitioners of various esoteric forms of spirituality and alternative medicine refer to a variety of claimed experiences and phenomena as being due to energy or force that defy measurement or experimentation, and thus are distinguished from the scientific form of energy. Okay, so they're saying that it's a defy measurement or experimentation. I'm saying that you can experiment with, and you could experiment with and measure the gases within the atmosphere, right? Like the ether, right? That even I believe that Newton and Einstein even got, like, they talked about ether and explained things away. But again, these are gases within the atmosphere, the atmos, that are contained, and based on things like temperature, pressure, and density, we're going to experience it at varying degrees. Sorry, it's hard for me to speak today. Oh my goodness. And so even with that, like, I'm just kind of like, if that's how if they think it's an esoteric energy, I'm not subscribing to that channel. I just wanted to get it out there and be clear. And with Wilhelm Reich, there's just things regarding him as a person and his involvement with Freud and Marxism and communism and possibly the sexual exploitation of humans and animals, possibly with I believe to be possibly pseudoscience. And then also societal collapsing political views, extreme radical views, in my humble opinion. And so I don't know. I'm just I'm not subscribing to this channel, unfortunately. And so maybe it would be good to have like I will debate this, right? I'm not going to just be unspoken. Yeah, orgone was seen as a massless, omnipresent substance similar to luminiferous ether. Luminiferous ether or ether was a postulated medium for the propagation of light. That's what I believe it is too. It was invoked to explain the ability of the apparent wave-based light to propagate through empty space. I don't think it's empty space. Something that waves should not be able to do. And so I'm going to. I can talk about animal magnetism. I think you might find this interesting. If you don't, then again, this is not related at all to chemtrails. But it's expanding reality. And if I'm going to go on the show, then I just want to share this information. So luminiferous ether, light bearing, was a postulated medium for the propagation of light. The ether hypothesis was a topic of considerable debate throughout its history, as it required the existence of an invisible and infinite material with no interaction with physical objects. As the nature of light was explored, especially in the 19th century, the physical qualities required of an ether became increasingly contradictory. So anyway, what I found really interesting, I need to look more into this. The negative outcome of the Michelson-Morley experiment suggested that the ether did not exist. I don't see how it did that. And so a finding that was confirmed in subsequent experiments in the 1920s. This led to considerable theoretical work to explain the propagation of light without an ether. A major breakthrough was the special theory of relativity, which could explain why the experiment failed to see ether, but it was more broadly interpreted to suggest that it was not needed. I want to look into black body radiator. I want to look into that. Photoelectric effect. Yeah. So I'm not agreeing with this because the Michelson-Morley experiment proved that the Earth was not moving. Very important. Anyway, I want to go into something else that was really interesting. Birefringence is the optical property of a material having a refractive index that depends on the polarization and propagation direction of light. Maybe this isn't interesting to you guys. Anyways, I'm going to look into this more in argon or orgon. On with the show, though. I don't think I'm going to show the whole thing. But again, I'm just waiting for Wood to come.
Burned most of his books. Fortunately, not all. Some survived.
Well, the German copies survived and were translated into English. And we also have a copy of Contact with Space, his last book, when he discovered the off-world interference on Earth, something not human interfering with our atmosphere. And he discovered this through using the orgone energy. And that's how we were able to continue his discoveries. We know that something up there, it's not human. I guess that's important to bring up too, that that type of travel you're seeing in the atmosphere that leaves chemtrails, that's not a human technology. And Wilhelm Reich knew this.
Yeah, so is it humans flying planes at all? I've seen also images, and these are all just what you make of them, but a video of an airplane that we would call an airplane spraying what we would call chemtrails out the back of it, and somebody zoomed in on the thing, and then all of a sudden it turns into a disc, a silver disc or 3 orbs, and then flies off.
Yeah, we have that.
We've seen stuff like that.
Yeah. These are, what we're seeing is most likely a holographic projection. And again, we don't have proof of what those things are. All we have proof of is what orgonite does, and we have definitive proof of that. As for what those are, we don't have proof, but the evidence is showing that there's a holographic element that's masking those orbs you're talking about to look like a plane so we could understand it. And that, yeah, it's not what meets the eye.
Yeah. No. And I also like to tell people that we know at this stage more about what isn't happening than what is.
Dude,
like there are things that we can rule out through process of elimination.
And I think there are 2 types of flight. I think there's the type that humans do, the kind we know about. You get on a plane, it's jet fuel, you travel in the sky. But there's another type, which is all that stuff you're seeing in the upper atmosphere, which we might not even be seeing. It might be 100% holographic projection. We don't know. But as for the lines in the sky, that is some kind of byproduct of whatever it is. And the orgonite gets rid of that byproduct, but it also eventually, when you hit critical mass like we have, gets rid of the flights themselves.
Which makes it more of an intelligent, controlled type of a thing, because it's almost like garlic to a vampire or something. You just saturate the area in something it doesn't like, and it can't terraform or exist in that area. This is such a fascinating new approach to this, and I love it, honestly. I absolutely love it. It's so empowering. It makes more sense, honestly, that they would put out psychological pictures.
Okay, so when you search for orgonite, what is orgonite made of? Organites do not need all types of fancy colors, gemstones, or bling, just plain crystal quartz, metal, and resin in correct ratio. So put a rock quartz crystal stone in a mold, cover it with metal shavings, often referred to as a swarf.
For something up there doing something, and that this thing up there doing whatever is going to do it anyway, but it projects a holographic image, because again, we have seen these planes, air quotes, morph into other things and vice versa.
I think this whole
right. And I have a lot of pictures of that. It's amazing. I have a whole chapter of my book on UFOs just because of the things I've seen out there.
My wife printed it, actually. It's back here. Do you see this thing right here on the back? Yeah. We printed this bad boy. Yeah.
It's called Invisible Soldiers, Silent War, Orgone Energy, and the Planetary Emergency. This covers the first 5 years of our orgonite gifting work from 2014 to 2019. It explains in great detail what we know about the energetic war and, what we've done in the field, but we've done, of course, now another 5 years of work. So it's gotten even further from where we were at that time.
It's awesome. I mean, it's just such an interesting perspective. It's so interesting to think about, plus empowering. It's like you're just calling them bullshit, Another component to this, I just want to ask you this, and then we're going to go into orgonite. About the barium, strontium, and aluminum. Allegedly, that is something that they're going to project Project Bluebeam onto and all of this kind of stuff. So where do you guys lie on that whole narrative with how it pertains to what's going on with your work?
Well, that narrative, I just want to say real quick,
yeah.
that narrative is too
I do agree that there are possibly particles that are being dispersed throughout the atmos that assist with holographic projections. I've said that before as well, so I am agreeing with that.
Out there and too convenient to be true, and anything that the government puts out there, that's what they want people to think. That's again, to go back to what you were saying about the levels of psyops. It's not just you get past the one and then everything is all truth and you're in the clear and you don't have to use your brain anymore. It doesn't work that way. There are many, many levels of this, and that's just one of them.
Do you think Sergey Monast was like a plant?
What's that?
Do you think Sergey Monast and the Project Bluebeam book and all that, do you think that was all sort of part of a psyop to even
Most
put
likely
the thing into the consciousness?
Most likely, yeah. That's what it feels like to me.
Feels like that was like the era of time of things being like that, right? With your Richard Doty's and things like this, your infiltration of CIAs into organizations and groups to provide misinformation, just to throw people
or the
off.
creation of groups to provide misinformation. I mean,
sure.
The geoengineering activist groups, you'll never see anything about orgone energy. You cannot understand what's going on in the atmosphere with weather or weather modification at all if you don't know orgonomy, and none of them do. So without an orgonomic background, understanding atmospheric energy, you can't understand anything going on up there. So they're not experts. They're
not just disinterested in orgonomy, they are actively opposed to it.
Yeah, well, I've had conversations with them. I've conversed with Dane Wigington, and I've met him, and he's completely opposed to it. And he was very friendly to me the first time I met him. I mean, very friendly as a guy like that can be.
It's a relative term.
Not a happy guy. But anyway, I met him at a consciousness event, and this is before Orgonite, and I was very into his work and doing whatever we could to spread the word on this, but we didn't have a solution. But yeah, he was friendly to me at that time, gave me some flyers to give out, but it was all disinfo. And then when I learned the truth and I spoke with him about it, he told me that, first off, he told us we shouldn't go to his event. We can't go to his event in Reading, which we went to, and it was August of 2015. So that's 9 years ago. We were going to go with some information on orgonite and just teach people that there's a solution to this. And he told me on the phone, he called me because he got wind of it, that we were going to be doing this.
He literally called cell phone
on the phone, and he said to me,
1 o'clock on a Tuesday.
It was the afternoon, actually, in the middle of because we were planning our trip. And he said to me, I can't have any discussion of this at my event. I would lose all my government and military contacts. So this is not part of that. Okay. They're not looking for a solution to this. There's a chapter of my book. My book is in two parts. The first half of it explains what this is, orgone energy, the war in the sky, and all of this stuff. The second half is all our field work, and it's more like a story. The second half reads more like a story. But in the first half of the book, I have a chapter on the controlled opposition, and it does explain what happened there. It does explain many, many things that have happened to us over the years with regards to controlled opposition, with being in independent media ourselves, and then not being anymore, and being kind of like blacklisted almost. That's why I was so amazed when you reached out for a podcast. I only get a few emails for podcasts these days compared to what I used to get, years ago. Once we discovered orgonite and really, really delved into it, we were having fewer and fewer media appearances. When my book came out in 2020, nobody wanted to interview me about it. I mean, I got very few interviews, and I had supporters of our work saying, I'm promoting you to this podcast. We're going to I want to get you on this one. I'm going to tell them all about you. And they would never reach out to me for an interview. And if they did, when I would reply to them, I wouldn't hear back from them again. Because once it got to the producers, that was it. They said, no way. But see, you're not that way. So
let's get to orgonite.
Having a lot of chemtrails, they say, well, get these tower busters or make them, because we have videos on how to make them yourself, and put these by all the cell towers in your community. And it's really not that hard to do, your local area, and you are going to see a total change up there. You neutralize the grid, get rid of the stuff.
Yeah, that's what I need. I need to print a few up because we've been, I mean, yesterday and today actually have been bad with chemtrails, and this little guy has just been pumping, I guess, but it's just been bad.
Well,
really
you need
bad.
a grid in the
Yeah.
city.
Yeah,
You-
exactly. We need
it's
significant
about
out here.
It's about those towers. There are many of them, and the more you gift, the more you will see the types of energetic and atmospheric changes Sharon talks about in the book and on the blog.
Yeah, but as far as the controlled opposition, they do not want us to know that we can do this, and they would lose a lot of business. I mean, they make money off of this. It's sad, but they make money off of these programs and events and things that they do to keep people in fear.
This event 9 years ago, when we learned about it, we were talking to each other and saying, all these people they're just going to be pumped with fear for a couple of hours, and they're going to go home miserable with no solutions. Let's go up there and like hand out flyers. And that's when Dane caught wind of it and called her. First, just to finish that story up, first he asked her, please don't go to this event. But she explained to him that, well, don't you want a solution?
It is open to the public.
You're so against this big problem. We have a solution here, and we can evidence that it actually works. It's only a year into our field work, but we still had ample evidence. And he wouldn't hear a word of it. And then finally, he went from asking us not to come to threatening us with forced removal by the police should we choose to come.
And then we went anyway. We were threatened with forced removal by the police, and we left. But we did get out some info.
Yeah, during intermission, we kept a low profile. We didn't have signs or anything. We were at the steps of the auditorium when people were filing out during intermission. We just handed out information about Organite, and we managed to get out quite a few informative flyers before the organizers caught wind of what was happening and then confronted us. So we got out of there.
Yeah, I wasn't
before anything could happen.
I didn't want a big kerfuffle, but so. There's been a lot of opposition to this over the years, but we're now in 2024. Through a miracle, you found out about our work, and it's totally helped you in your environment. And I'm hoping that more and more people find out about it. And through your podcast, I'm thinking a lot of people will. So this is a great way to get it out. It's really simple to improve your own energetic environment. We're talking about in your home as well. So that will be important that we talk about the Organite, its effect in your home on your consciousness and your health, as well as how it can be used in your neighborhood to improve the weather, because it's both. We're life force beings. The atmosphere is governed by the life force energy. So what we need to do on Earth is increase life force energy and remove deadly energy. And it's really simple.
And when we say improvements in the weather, we are talking major scale here, like droughts, hurricanes, tornadoes can all be a thing of the past if people take this and run with it.
It sounds like there's an intelligence up there that has apprehended some human, air quotes, humans down here that built towers down here to facilitate their need to pump the energy up there. And we're just sort of caught in the middle of all of this. Is this sort of the game that's being played?
Yeah. Well, this planet has a parasitic infection. True. And Wilhelm Reich figured this out right at the very tail end there of his work. He determined that it had been going on at least 25,000 years. And we're still just kind of figuring out the nature of this infestation, but it does exist. And fortunately, we know how to defeat the enemy.
Yeah, we don't even know exactly who they are.
Yeah.
Wilhelm Reich thought of them as extraterrestrials that were influencing Earth. There's an author, Mac Tawney.
I don't believe in extraterrestrials that go beyond this Earth plane, this cosmos. If they're talking about extraterrestrials and they are talking about the humans or species that could possibly live on land that's beyond like the land that we're existing in right now, that the known inhabited lands, sure, where you have interterrestrial lands and extraterrestrial lands, and maybe, but even with what they're calling alien aircrafts and stuff like this, I believe that these are advanced technologies that are being utilized by known corporations and military industrial complexes and government agencies that are working with them that they're seeing. If that makes any sense.
who wrote a book called The Crypto-Terrestrials, which is a really amazing take on it, which is that they're not actually extraterrestrials, but they live here on Earth alongside with us. Although we don't see them, we don't know who they are, but they're here secretively.
Sort of like a they live type situation.
Yeah.
So there is something not human. I mean, and that's a really hard thing for people, is that there's other beings that aren't human. But, anybody who's listening to your podcast is going to be open to that idea. This isn't like I'm not going on CNN with this, but, that's a tough one for people. So we are at war with something that's not human, and they need us. And actually, Mac Tawney is saying in his book that there's and this is written in, published in 2009. I mean, he died in 2009, and the book was published right after he.
This might be a very interesting podcast tonight. Or today, because I feel like we're going to disagree on everything, or we're going to disagree on a lot of things.
Died. It was written probably around 2008, so he didn't know about orgonite. But he knew about the energetic war to a degree, and he knew that there was some kind of being using frequency on us. And that they've set this thing up like a farming operation. Wilhelm Reich said they were mining our suffering. They wanted us in a low state of suffering.
And that's that we've confirmed the same thing. And I kind of alluded to this on Chris's show, Forbidden Knowledge News. Their food, whatever this race is of parasitic beings, their food is human suffering. That's why every single thing is done, like almost in lockstep, without exception, to generate that food for them. Like there's not even one thing that they get right. And, you would think that over the course of the events, the law of averages would state that occasionally something would be done right and people would feel good or benefit from something. No, everything is always done to generate that suffering without exception. So it's the formulaic nature of it that gives it away, I think.
Yeah.
It makes complete sense. This is the Archons. We've talked about this, so much, and I've spoken recently about okay, let me ask before I set this up. Are you guys globe folks or exclusively, or do you think that this could be a flat or a realm or a simulation? What is your sort of worldview possibility wise?
And you'll get to when you get to my book, you'll see I did briefly mention this flat versus globe argument, which I don't get involved in that argument because we know so little about anything. So we really don't. I mean, I would say I can't tell you either way. How do we know this is a globe? I don't think it's flat. I don't think it is. I think that it's not a globe either. I think it's beyond that. I think that in the third dimension, it appears to us as a globe, but this is a multidimensional planet. So, this goes far beyond anything that we can see with the eye. I do consider the flat Earth versus round Earth to be a 2D versus 3D argument, still in the physical realm. So I wouldn't be able to tell you because we don't know anything. It seems that in the third dimension, as we live, it seems to be a globe, and all the orgonomic evidence says that it's a globe where weather systems travel around it. I mean, based on Wilhelm Reich's work, it looks like it's round. But I also think that is a simplistic way of looking at something that once you get past the fourth dimensional barrier into higher dimensional consciousness, it probably wouldn't look round either.
Simulation sounds about right to me.
Okay.
I would go with simulation. We absolutely debunk globe. Anyone that's paying attention to these videos or just viewing, sorry, not paying attention, but anyone just viewing, look at my multiple videos on the shape of the Earth and the reality of the Earth. It's an electromagnetic reality being projected via light at various pressure densities and temperatures, projected on a flat plane of inertia. And
like it's some kind of like we're living in a hologram, basically. I mean, the third dimension is very simple, and
we're experiencing it through multiple dimensions, but like beyond 3-dimensional, right? So even time being in itself its own dimension, or movement. And so the sun's travel path in a circular direction, creating as it travels through like the Tropic of Cancer, and then expands outwards to the equatorial ring or belt, and then further outwards towards the Tropic of Capricorn, where the furthest it goes south and north is 23.4 degrees north and south latitude from the equatorial ring, which is approximately 1,660 miles.
And so when you map that out, right, you've got amplitude, and then you've got time / degrees, and that's what creates the sine waves when you map out that the sun and the other luminaries travel path through throughout the day and the seasons. And anyways, I can go on with this for forever, but I won't.
Simplistic.
That's just like, again, I'm just switching gears completely. It's hard for me to do that when I'm like when these are very complex topics.
What do you?
By the way,
go ahead,
just real quick, I just want to say before I forget, we really don't like the term archons, just because arch is a prefix that means ruler, and they are not.
Archons means ruler.
They are the polar opposite of rulers.
You know what? We're taking back the word elite. We're not calling them that anymore. We're calling them the derelite, right? The derelite. So we're right here with you.
Yeah, the
deletes. I like that. Okay, we're writing that one down. Okay,
But the
very nice.
archons,
So what would you call them instead?
Well, Cameron Day was the first guy that explained when I was reading up on him that when they say archons, it means rulers. So I call them the ankle biters, he said. That's what he called them. I got another friend that calls them the ass corns.
we these days, especially since reading Mac Tawney's book, The Crypto Terrestrials, we've started calling them the CTs.
Yeah.
Which of course is short for crypto terrestrial.
Yeah, which would be, so this idea then would be that, yes, it wasn't always like this, and maybe some cataclysm happened here and brought about this force, or it was, do you think that this, simulation just sort of interjects something like this, sort of like, hey, you're getting bored, it's time to do something different, and they go, haha, and they toss a parasitic entity on the realm here, and it's just up to us to battle it, or?
Well, it's a mystery where they...
That's a good point, Dojo. I'm wondering, like, should I do this podcast if it's just going to be like us debating each other the whole time? Like, I'm going to have to show like sine waves and like and how light forms and how even like music forms, sound forms, like the toroidal fields. Like, do I show like the Earth curve calculator being like debunked consistently and by a lot? Do I, there's no physical geographic horizon? Do I talk about water seeking level? Do I talk about Boyle's laws, the laws? Like there's just so much to talk about, right? And that's like, and then even with the atmosphere, the atmos, whatever you want to call it, this ether, we don't agree on that either. Anyway,
came from or why they're here. We just know that they're evil and they're here. I mean, good and evil is just built into the fabric of the dualistic world, that as third dimensional beings, and I have a chapter about the dualistic world as well in my book. The book is not just about Organite and what it does. It explains this whole underlying energetic war. But yeah, I mean, evil is just part of God's plan. I mean, it's just the way it is. We are being tested in some way here on Earth. And we need to just persevere through it and get rid of the parasitic infection.
Yeah, because the symbiosis between humans and this parasite, it doesn't work.
And it is a symbiotic relationship. And it's done these days. It's kind of crazy what's happened. I think through Organite gifting, we've seen such a decrease in the CT population. They can't be here unless the energy field is to their needs, which would be deadly to us. So we're seeing less and less CT influence. People are waking up more and more. And what they've done is they've basically automated the mind control at this point. They have to mind control humanity in order for us to stay in this low state. I mean, they've done it for eons. They keep us in mental slavery. They've basically automated the process now through
perception is reality.
Smartphones. So they've given everybody, and people love them. They took them. They're like, oh, this is great. It's a tracking device that also puts out a signal of mind control. And yeah, I know there's conveniences to it. You're using the internet, you're getting your work done, whatever. But at the same time, you're being hit with deadly radiation, DOR. It's the opposite of carrying Organite to carry a smartphone. And you're being hit with messages all the time, whether you're looking at it or not. It's putting you into a low state of consciousness because DOR is a low state of consciousness. But they've basically automated the mind control because there aren't enough of them to control billions of humans. So everybody's got this automated mind control device now. And the more we gift Organite, the more that's short circuiting. So I do urge people to be aware that if you're carrying a cell phone, which you are, even if it's a dumb phone, it is putting out deadly radiation.
And it's addictive too. It's highly, highly addictive.
The radiation changes your constitution.
Yeah, changes your mental pathways.
It changes everything, and you
alters
become
your
addicted.
thought forms, everything.
What about an Orgonite phone case?
Yeah, people will always ask me about that. I don't want that battle going on in your hand right next to your head all the time. That's going to be an energetic battle right on your, see, when you have the phone right up against you or near you, you're in its field. So even if you have the Orgonite there, you're so close to the DOR source. Orgonite doesn't block it. So what it does is it creates a counter field of a opposing energy, which smooths it out and neutralizes it to where it's safer. But distance is your friend, and around the offending device, there's always going to be a DOR field. So even if you have the Orgonite, you've got an energetic battle going on now right in your space. If the source of DOR is far away, like your neighbor's cell phone in their house across the street, then you're good because it's far enough from you that you're not in its direct path. But within a few feet around the offending device, you still have a deadly field. So you really shouldn't use it.
Yeah.
I know people aren't going to like that, but my website explains how to hardwire your whole life and have all the technology that we have without the radiation.
Yeah, the phone shields to me are like, hopping on a treadmill for a few minutes after you've just eaten McDonald's.
Or eating McDonald's while you're on the treadmill.
You're right. Even worse.
So I recommend people just keep the Orgonite with you. Don't use your smartphone, at least if you can at night when you're sleeping. Turn it off. You are going to feel a push and pull. I mean, you might feel better just having the Orgonite even while using the phone. I know when I'm traveling and I'm forced to use a cell phone, the Orgonite helps take the edge off. But I use it as briefly as possible and then turn it off because that DOR is still there. People want something to block it, but you can't completely block it and have the cell phone work.
Even in airplane mode, DOR is still there.
So we recommend not using it if you can, but if you have to use it, yes, the Orgonite will smooth out that wave, but minimize your use because when it's right up against you, you're getting fully bombarded with the DOR.
Wow. How does Orgonite energies help with the health of everything? It's just the overall health of all it comes in contact with.
It is life. So I'm going to briefly explain what goes in the Orgonite. I have a kind of a visual aid here. This is one you can see all the parts. So orgone energy is life force energy. And in this device, there's a crystal in there. It's kind of hard to see. I'm trying to do it. So that's a tourmalated quartz crystal and some shungite stones. There's also some crushed selenite in there, a copper.
So just a simple search of what is Orgonite made of. I already said it, but I'll say it again. Orgonites do not need all types of fancy colors, gemstones, or bling. Just plain crystal quartz, metal, and resin in correct ratio, apparently.
Coil, and most importantly, a lot of very, very fine brass shavings. These are extremely fine. So the way it works is that the crystals and the metals all produce orgone energy naturally. Everything on Earth is producing life force energy. It is the energy of creation. In fact, all the physical things you see are orgone energy slowed down to a vibration to where it becomes physical. So in this device, we amplify the natural orgone that's already there by putting all these things together and then using a epoxy, or this is epoxy resin, but usually we use a polyester resin. Either way, it catalyzes and squeezes upon the elements, and that activates their piezoelectric properties, which amplifies the energy. So you've got thousands of these tiny little particles of brass, and the orgone squeezes on them, and it amplifies that energy to where it creates this increase, this wave, this major wave of orgone energy that will literally knock out the ability of a cell tower to alter the atmosphere. I mean, it neutralizes it. So
it provides a counter frequency to what the tower is putting out.
Right up against the tower, you're still in the deadly field, but even a few feet away, it's already being neutralized. And ultimately, what's so wonderful about the Orgonite is it works even harder when you put it near a deadly energy source. So it wants to undo that.
To overtake it.
It wants to overtake it. So this is why I say in your own home, you should have the Orgonite, but you should also reduce DOR because you're going to be at ground zero for an energetic battle. So if you can reduce the DOR too, you're going to be in better shape. If you can't, then yeah, you just want to have a lot of orgonite to neutralize its effects, because it's going to create a field that basically flattens out.
We've been doing this work for 10 years, so take it from us.
Yeah.
We've been at ground zero of many, many energetic battles. I've lost track of the total number.
So what do you mean by
What I mean is that push and pull that she's talking about between OR and DOR, it's very jarring.
Yeah, they fight each other.
Yeah,
but the OR always wins. So
but it's a fight every time.
But what I've noticed is this, and you expressed this great change that happened in your house. What I noticed is this, even for people like us that had cell phones and Wi-Fi, when we first started, we had cell phones and Wi-Fi in our house. When we first made the orgonite, everything just was so peaceful, even with the DOR, because the OR overtakes it. And also it helps you to detox from your addiction to the DOR. Your body gets used to that. But over time, you're going to want to start reducing the DOR because you're going to become more sensitive. As you clean up and become less toxic, you're going to become more sensitive. So at first, you're going to feel that euphoria of first having the orgone energy. But then if you start to feel unwell ever, it's because your body has become so clean that the deadly radiation is affecting you worse. So that's why I say, yeah, get more orgonite if you can, but ultimately reduce your dependence on things that emit DOR. Hardwire your internet. I have instructions on my site how to do that. It's not hard. We're doing that right now.
And you can have all the same technological capabilities you did before, everything.
But you also have to get used to the idea of not being able to just look stuff up anytime when you're out there. Oh, let me look that up right now. I'll look it up when I get home on my computer. You know, you have to just kind of get used to that and use the cell phone just as it was meant to be used. You know, if you need a phone while you're out there, if you use it in that way consciously, you'll be fine. You know, I mean, we use a cell phone when we're out there too. If we're traveling, I have to make a call. I'm away from the house, but I don't use it for looking things up. I don't use it for emailing. It's just a conscious use of technology, because as you get more clean energetically, you'll become more sensitive and you'll feel the need to be more conscious of your use of technology.
With that, you guys traveling around a lot, you're around a lot of cell phones, you know, in airports and things like this. So with you becoming way more sensitive, how is it whenever you get around a bombarded environment? Like if you go to somebody's Christmas party or something like this, right?
It's hard. It's hard. We live about an hour north of Los Angeles in the mountains. And when we have to go down into the city, I inexplicably get a headache every time. Almost every time. It's tough because you go from a clean energy field to literally being immersed in that DOR field. And it doesn't matter how much orgonite you have around you, because there's hundreds and hundreds of people with cell phones and, you know, a lot of neutralized towers, granted, but it is
the distance is your friend. Yeah. Once again, if you're right up close and personal with it, it does still affect you because the energy is still there. So what we do to make it easier on ourselves is we use orgonite pendants. I'll wear orgonite, you know, or carry it in my pocket. We have pocket stones and pendants so that surrounding myself, at least I've got that protection. I even made orgonite earrings, you know, to have the protection right up at my head. So around myself, I'm good, but I do tend to actually stay away from people. I do tend to try to keep, you know, social distancing. I know that's funny. I'm social distancing for radiation and, you know, perfumes and stuff. People really like douse themselves in perfumes these days. So you become more sensitive to all that. So I stay away from people and that helps me. I would say last time you didn't say you got a headache. I didn't get a headache last time either.
Not last time, but I also carry around a pocket stone. Here's my little pocket stone I carry.
Awesome. Yeah. So you could keep yourself safe as best you can, you know? We minimize our time out there. And it's really interesting you brought this up because I'm going up to Boise myself this time. Usually we gift together. This time I'm going up myself and I'm taking a bus to get there. And it's going to be like basically a 24-hour trip there and back. And I was thinking, how am I going to get through this? I don't take planes, by the way. Ever since we figured out what's going on up there, I don't want to go interdimensionally, and I don't want a human driving me around up there either. So I don't go on planes since 2017.
Thing, right? They just portal and interdimensional took off. Do you think
I'm not?
Sorry.
Your government representative and complain to them, you know, that kind of stuff.
So I didn't really know what any of that was, other than it was something not normal. It was something not good. And so after Gabe brought it up with me, you know, I started done it. I gave this lady a meal, and she was actually in tears. She said she hadn't eaten in 2 days, and
she's out everywhere. And then when they go ask for help, then maybe they get a little more response because of the positive energy they're beaming around everywhere.
Well, we have done it, and I mean, it helps everybody.
Yeah, it's an
we've
awesome
noticed
thing.
that we've noticed that gifting the towers brings about the most positive changes. So we just focus our time and energy exclusively.
And the aligned help at that. Now, we've got so much more to talk about here, guys, but we're going to go into the afterthought here. But before we let you guys run, again, to remind everyone that all the ways to find them located down below. If you guys want to join us for that afterthought, great way to support your favorite show. And it's down in the link description down there as well. Before we let you guys run off, though, hit us with what gets you out of bed every morning. That's a wild place saturated with EMF and weird terraforming entities flying around in the sky doing weird shit. You know, what gets you out of bed every morning, keeps you moving forward with hope?
You know, that's so funny. What gets me out of bed every morning is my horse.
Sorry, you have livestock. I get it. Yeah.
But no, I'm laughing about that because it's really hard to get out of bed in the morning. I mean, this is a very, very difficult world to live in. But what gets me out of bed in the morning is my family, my horse, my husband, the people I love. That they're the ones that keep me going. That's what we really need. We need, family and friends to help us to persevere. You know, being alone is hard, and we are mostly alone. I mean, together, we're alone together, but, any support you can find, and just knowing that the battle is being won, just knowing that we've had the solution for 10 years. As soon as we discovered Organite, my life went from negative to positive just like that. I mean, all the negativity just fades away when you know you have a solution to these problems. So yeah, the love of my family and just the desire to continue to purge the parasitic infection and heal this world.
I have a couple different reasons than you.
Please, yeah.
The alarm clock chiefly gets me out of bed. And the DORized people in our neighborhood who make a point of making their noise as early as possible in the morning, and then it's quiet the rest of the day generally.
Yeah, 7 a.m. is when you run that chainsaw. Absolutely.
Yeah.
7 a.m. is the noisy hour. 4 a.m. is the DOR bombarding hour. 4 a.m. is when they wake you with energy. 7 a.m. is when they wake you with sound. But I would say the last couple of days here have been insanely OR-ish. Like we were commenting, like, our horse was flipping out and running around. And he does that when there's an energy change. He's actually the laziest horse on earth. He barely moves. But when there's an energy change, he'll start getting all amped up. So yeah, over the weekend, we noticed this incredibly high OR.
Okay. I've shared like a large percentage of that. And again, I'm hoping that the wood comes soon so that I can start piling it. It's supposed to rain at some point, not today or tomorrow, but it is overcast right now. On that note, I will leave it at that. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.